Hello. Do you have a moment? As I spoke on the phone, I began recalling the events that had just unfolded in such a short span of time. I have been married to my husband, Steve, for 15 years now, but just moments ago, I found out that Steve had been cheating on me. Not only that, but it seems that Steve has an illegitimate child with his mistress. He has never been the best husband or the best father. And yet, I chose him as my partner. I had made up my mind to spend the rest of my life with Steve, living together as a family. But Steve easily betrayed my feelings for him. I will never forgive him. There is no love left in my heart for Steve, only a swirling mass of anger. I've decided to take matters into my own hands and get back at Steve. My name is Carol Clark. I'm a 43-year-old housewife, just like any other. I live with my husband, Steve, and our 6-year-old daughter, Olivia. My life had always been quite ordinary, with nothing particularly remarkable about it. After graduating from college, I landed a job at a local company. I worked as an office clerk until I was 25, but I started thinking it was time to find someone to marry. So I went to a party that my friend had invited me to. It's hard to find the right person, isn't it? I muttered to myself at the lively party, making sure no one could hear. My friend had promised to gather some good-looking guys, but none of them particularly appealed to me. Looks aren't everything. I wanted to meet someone with a good heart, someone genuine. As I was thinking this, I noticed a man off to the side, busy attending to things. "Are you all set with the food over there? It's about time to order drinks. Pass me the empty glasses." He was attentive to his surroundings and acted thoughtfully. I was instantly drawn to him. If I could marry someone like that, I'm sure I'd be happy. So I seized the opportunity and managed to get his contact information. "Would someone like me be okay? You're the one I want." When I said that while exchanging numbers, Steve's face turned bright red. Our relationship blossomed, and 15 years ago, we got married. We were blessed with our long-awaited daughter, and we have been living a happy life, or so I wanted to say. The happiness in our marriage only lasted for a brief time after Olivia was born. It's already this time of day again. Between housework and taking care of Olivia, the day had slipped away, and now it was evening. I let out a big sigh as I rocked Olivia in my arms. After Olivia was born, I took an extended maternity leave. Originally, I had planned to return to work shortly, but Steve wasn't helping at all, and I couldn't even find a child care center. Because of that, I was forced to take care of Olivia on my own, leading to more and more days filled with nothing but sighs. Even though it's his day off today, he's out on another motorcycle tour, just like always. Steve had loved motorbike touring since before we got married, and when we were dating, he would take me along on the back for long trips. But after I got pregnant with Olivia, I couldn't ride the motorcycle anymore, so Steve started going out by himself. I don't intend to criticize his hobby, but he's going out way too often. Even on his days off, if he has the time, he leaves without a second thought, abandoning Olivia and me. I want to go out on my own every once in a while, too. I've kept quiet and endured it until now, but I've finally reached my limit. That day, when Steve came back from his tour, I decided to confront him directly. "Hey, could you please help out with the housework and childcare sometimes? I want to go out by myself for a change." But Steve just made a disgusted face at my words. "I've never done housework or taken care of kids, so I don't even know how to do it. You can do it faster anyway, Carol. Then I'll teach you." "No thanks, that's a hassle. Besides, I work hard all week, don't I? I'm the one earning money for you guys to live on. At least let me enjoy my day off." Steve's expression was one of exasperation, as if I were the one in the wrong. Steve says he's the breadwinner, but his salary is about the same as mine. And now, while I'm on maternity leave, I'm managing to scrape by on a smaller budget. Besides, there's no such thing as a day off when it comes to housework and childcare. I could feel my love for Steve fading away, as he failed to understand even that much. It looks like I'll just have to manage on my own. Relying on Steve was a waste of time. Having come to that realization, I desperately searched for a child care center and finally managed to get Olivia enrolled. Once I returned to work, I threw myself into the daily struggle of balancing child care, housework, and my job, all on my own. Then one day, while I was at work, I was carrying a heavy load when a coworker, not paying attention, bumped into me. In that moment, the load slipped from my arms and came crashing down onto the top of my foot. The pain was so intense I couldn't even make a sound. "Isn't this broken?" My foot started to swell, turning red and purple before my eyes. Since the pain was so bad I could barely walk, I left work early and headed to the hospital. The diagnosis was exactly as I feared, a fracture. For the time being, I'd have to live with a cast. When I got home, I showed my broken foot to Steve and explained the situation. "So I won't be able to drive the car with this foot. We need to go grocery shopping this weekend, so you'll have to drive." I've already made plans for a tour this weekend. Can't you just take a taxi or something?" Instead of being concerned for me, Steve looked annoyed and prioritized his plans over mine. I was so stunned by his unbelievable response that I was left speechless. I tried asking him a few more times after that, but he wouldn't listen. In the end, Steve went out for his motorcycle tours every weekend. With Steve constantly acting like this, the thought of divorce started creeping into my mind. From that point on, my attitude toward Steve naturally became cold. Perhaps realizing that things were getting serious, Steve handed me a present on our wedding anniversary the next month. "Here, for you." "What? You've ignored our anniversary every year until now. What's gotten into you? Can't I do something nice for a change?" Even though I complained, I was actually excited to receive a gift for the first time in years. But when I opened it, my mood immediately dropped. "Well, thanks anyway." The gift was a necklace, but it was such a cute and girly design, completely missing the mark on my taste. The clothes I usually wear are simple, and this kind of accessory didn't suit me at all. Still, it's something Steve gave me. I thought this to myself quietly. The necklace was from a well-known brand and must have been quite expensive. Thinking about how Steve must have dipped into his savings to buy it for me, I couldn't just disregard his feelings. Maybe I should buy some new clothes that match this necklace after all. With that thought, I put the necklace on. How does it look? Does it suit me? I didn't think it would suit me, but I looked toward Steve anyway. However, Steve stared at the necklace with a surprised expression. "Sorry, I made a mistake. That's not the one I bought for you, Carol. Could you take it off, please?" Confused, I took off the necklace and handed it back to Steve. Steve went back to his room and then handed me another gift. "This is the present I got for you, Carol." "Thanks." When I opened it, I saw the name of a brand I had never heard of before. It was clearly a cheap piece of jewelry, with a very tacky design that was apparent at first glance. If that necklace wasn't for me, who was it for then? Surprised by the drastic difference between the two gifts, I couldn't ignore the question, so I asked Steve. He casually replied, without a hint of hesitation, "That's my necklace." You're going to wear such a cute, girly necklace. Didn't you know? This kind of design is trending among men lately." He said this as he put the necklace on, so confidently that I couldn't bring myself to argue further. With that bizarre incident behind us, by the time Olivia started elementary school, I was still married to Steve. His refusal to help with housework and childcare hadn't changed since the early days. However, by that time, I had gotten so used to my hectic life that I began to think of it as normal. Besides, Steve and I have a daughter together. If I were to get divorced, Olivia would be the one who'd get hurt. It's just a matter of me enduring it. Besides, he's the one I chose. I'm the one who chose Steve, after all. I had to take responsibility for my own choices. As time passed, I came to think this way, and I decided to abandon the idea of divorcing Steve. "I'm off. Have a good trip." That day, Steve was leaving for a company trip, so he headed out with a large suitcase. Where's Dad going? He's going on a trip with his coworkers. You're looking forward to the souvenirs, right? Yay. Olivia nodded with a big smile. I smiled and nodded back, continuing with the morning routine. After sending Olivia off to school, I headed to work as usual. Another day with a mountain of tasks. Recently, my company expanded its operations, and because of that, it's been an extremely busy period. As I was working hard as usual, the clock already pointed to noon. Time for a lunch break. Oh, a call from Grandpa. When I checked my smartphone, I saw that my grandfather was calling at just the right time. I had always been a grandpa's girl, and even after I moved out, we kept in frequent contact. However, lately, both my grandfather and I had been busy with work, so we hadn't had much time to talk. Hello, Grandpa. It's been a while. Feeling a bit excited about catching up with him, I answered the phone. But for some reason, my grandfather's voice sounded unusually heavy. Carol, I need you to stay calm and listen. Huh, what's wrong? Confused, I heard him quietly say something utterly shocking. Your husband, he's having an affair. And apparently, he has an illegitimate child too. What? At first, I couldn't comprehend what he was saying, and all I could muster was a weak, baffled response. However, as the meaning of his words slowly sank in, I raised my voice in disbelief. What are you talking about, Grandpa? Steve? Cheating? That can't be true. I understand it's hard to believe, but it's true. I'll send you some photos now. I heard the notification from WhatsApp while still on the call with my grandfather. I opened the message, and there they were. Steve, with a wide grin, standing next to a woman I didn't recognize, and a child who looked about the same age as Olivia. This is, Carol, I know this is hard, but it's the truth. What are you going to do? Grandpa's on your side, no matter what. It seemed my grandfather thought I was in shock, but the truth was, I wasn't. Even I was surprised at how calm I was, but the facts in front of me didn't shock me as much as I would have expected. I had suspected something was off for a while now. Steve's frequent weekend bike trips were probably just an excuse to meet with the other woman and his secret child. And that whole present fiasco. The cute necklace he accidentally gave me was likely meant for his mistress. The strange feelings I had about Steve's behavior all started to make sense, and I quietly accepted the truth in my heart. Thanks for telling me, Grandpa. I'm okay. I mean, I'm a little surprised, but though I wasn't particularly shocked by the affair, I hadn't expected there to be a child involved. That was the only thing that truly surprised me. With an oddly clear mind, I started to think about what I should do next. Grandpa, can I call you later? I have a plan. Of course, call me anytime. Thanks. After ending the call with my grandfather, I immediately dialed another number. Hello. Do you have a moment? The person I called was a close family member. I explained everything that had happened so far, along with a certain plan I had in mind. And with that, I wasted no time in setting my plan into motion. The next day, I arrived at a certain place, accompanied by a large group. Thanks for inviting me, Carol. Thank you for coming on such short notice. Walking beside me was my sister-in-law, Barbara. From the first time we met, Barbara and I had gotten along exceptionally well. To be honest, I felt more comfortable around Barbara than Steve, as our values and way of thinking aligned much better. Barbara felt the same way and often joked, half seriously, that she wished I were her real sister instead of Steve. After hearing your story, there was no way I could refuse. I'm sure everyone else here feels the same way, right? Barbara glanced behind us with a smile. There, walking in a group, was my family. My retired parents, my aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone who could come was here. These were all people I was close to. That's right. I've got so many people on my side, so there's nothing to fear. As I said this, I looked up at a large hotel. My family and I were staying here tonight. After checking in and leaving Olivia in the care of my relatives, I headed to the hotel's souvenir shop. I had been told that the person I was looking for was there. This company trip has been so much fun, especially with Jennifer here. I stopped in my tracks when I heard that familiar voice. Barbara, who had come along, also halted beside me. But are you sure this is okay? Even if this is a family-friendly trip, you still have real family, don't you? A real family? Don't make me laugh. They're not my family. You and the kids are my true family. Steve smiled gently at the woman he called Jennifer. I want to divorce Carol as soon as possible, but I think she's getting suspicious of me. Once things cool down, I'll divorce her and marry you. Just wait a little longer, okay, Steve? Of course, I'll wait for as long as it takes. That will be unnecessary. I couldn't bear to listen to their cheap conversation any longer, so I stepped in between the two. Are we done yet? Phew, I was about to catch a cold from the chill of listening to these two. Barbara followed my lead and stepped in as well. Jennifer looked at us with a puzzled expression, while Steve's eyes widened in shock, his face displaying the greatest surprise I had ever seen. Carol. And you, Cess, what are you doing here? What do you mean by that? We're here with the entire family, staying at this hotel. Steve's eyes darted from me to the family behind me, his mouth moving, but no words coming out. Mom, Dad too. I turned to look behind me, and sure enough, our family stood there, glaring at Steve with furious faces. Steve was visibly panicking, glancing nervously between Jennifer and me. Unlike Steve, who was completely flustered, Jennifer quickly composed herself, trying to smooth over the situation. Nice to meet you. I'm Jennifer Taylor, one of Steve's coworkers. He's always been such a great help to me. Jennifer smiled softly, clearly hoping to pass herself off as a colleague. Ah, so that's the route they're taking. Since this was a company trip, her excuse of being a coworker wasn't completely out of the realm of possibility. But that lie wouldn't work on me. One of the men in our group, a relative of mine, stepped forward and spoke up. What are you talking about? You're not an employee of ours. That fool lied and said you were his family so you could join the trip. You're just a mistress. No way would we hire someone as disrespectful as you, Chairman. Steve's face turned pale as he shouted. Yes, my grandfather isn't just an ordinary man. He's a sharp businessman who saved Steve's company when it was struggling financially. Now he's the chairman of Steve's company. Wait, what? Jennifer's confident smile instantly vanished, replaced by a look of utter confusion. Steve, too, seemed lost, not understanding the gravity of the situation. So I quickly explained the situation and the truth that had been hidden until now. My grandpa told me that you were here on this company trip with your mistress and a legitimate child. And guess what? My grandpa also happens to be the chairman of your company. You've been having a great time sneaking off on this affair, but it's all over now. Barbara followed up with her own explanation. Yesterday, Carol called me and told me about your affair. That's when she decided to confront you directly, but she was nervous about going alone, so she asked me to come along for support, and I suggested we bring the whole family to back her up. The relative I had called yesterday was, in fact, Barbara. After my grandfather informed me of Steve's affair, I couldn't just sit still. I was determined to confront Steve and his mistress directly, but the truth was, I was scared to go alone. What if the two of them tried to talk their way out of it? As the thought crossed my mind, the first person who came to mind was Barbara. There was a time when Steve wasn't helping at all with housework or taking care of Olivia, and I hit my breaking point. My parents lived a bit far away, and my mom wasn't in good health at the time. My dad was busy taking care of her, so I couldn't rely on them. I can't do this anymore. I can't keep living like this. I was at my limit, crying alone in the house while holding little Olivia. That's when Barbara, who happened to be nearby for some errands, decided to stop by. Seeing me in tears, she comforted me and asked what was going on. At first, I hesitated to share my troubles with Steve's sister, but Barbara gave me a warm smile and said, "It's okay. Trust me. You can tell me anything." Before I knew it, I found myself pouring my heart out to her. I see. You've been going through a lot, Carol. I'm sorry my foolish brother has put you through this. No, Barbara. It's not your fault. As I tried to respond, Barbara gently pulled me into a hug. Carol, you can rely on me. If the housework or childcare becomes too much, I'll help you out. And if you ever need to vent or talk things over, I'm here. After all, I'm a mother just like you. And trust me, I'm a lot more reliable than Steve. Barbara, thank you. Barbara's words saved me that day. And it wasn't just words, she showed it through her actions too. Whenever things got overwhelming, Barbara was there to help me with the house and Olivia. Thanks to her, I managed to raise Olivia even without Steve's help. This is why Barbara and I have such a close bond. To be honest, we're closer than I ever was with Steve. So when I found out Steve was cheating, the first person I turned to was Barbara. Together, we came up with a plan. We reached out to our close relatives, and I booked the hotel where Steve was staying during his work trip. I even enlisted the help of my grandfather, who gave us the details of Steve's location. You're no brother of mine, Barbara said coldly, glaring at Steve. I'm Carol's sister. Anyone who hurts my dear sister-in-law, I don't care who it is, I'll make sure they regret it. And that goes for you too, Miss Cheating Partner. Get ready, because we're not holding back. Barbara was truly terrifying when she was angry. Jennifer, the cheating partner, turned pale from the intensity of Barbara's words. Steve, too, stood frozen in fear, trembling as Barbara's rage washed over him. Then when our eyes met, Steve suddenly blurted out, Carol, why didn't you tell me your grandfather was the chairman? We're married. You should have told me. Why'd you keep it a secret? Oh, that. You're right. I did keep it a secret, and I'm sorry for that. But if I had told you, you would have used it to flaunt your power, wouldn't you? My words hit Steve right where it hurt. There was another reason I kept that from him. It was sometime after I had started dating Steve. During one of our casual conversations on a date, I learned where he worked. Oh, that company. What's up? Oh, nothing. I was surprised to hear the name of a company that sounded so familiar, but I kept quiet. Steve's workplace was the company my grandfather had recently become the president of. Before taking on that role, my grandfather had worked for a different company. He only had a high school education, but he succeeded through his own hard work and rose to the position of president entirely on merit. Within the industry, he was somewhat famous as a sharp, talented businessman. Steve's company, seeing the value in my grandfather's abilities, asked for his help. At the time, Steve's company was on the brink of collapse, and they had no choice but to either turn things around or shut down for good. My grandfather became the president of Steve's company and helped pull it out of crisis. When I got back from the date, I asked my grandfather directly. He quickly checked the employee roster and confirmed that Steve did indeed work there. Could you keep the fact that I'm the president a secret for a while? Why? When I found out that Steve worked for my grandfather's company, I hesitated to tell him without getting my grandfather's permission. So I had planned to ask first. But then my grandfather asked me not to say anything. I'm really busy with the company's restructuring right now. Please don't take this the wrong way, but I honestly don't have the time to deal with Carol's boyfriend at the moment. Once things settle down, I'll properly introduce myself. I see. Okay, I understand. I know you're busy, Grandpa. I don't want to bother you, so I'll keep quiet for now. Thank you, Carol. And so I decided to keep it a secret from Steve for a while. However, my grandfather remained busy, and he couldn't even attend our wedding because of work. That's how I missed my chance to introduce them. But in truth, there had been plenty of chances to bring up my grandfather. After Olivia was born, my grandfather's work finally calmed down, and he was promoted to chairman in recognition of saving the company. But by then, Steve had stopped helping with the housework and child care, so I became too busy to think about it. Around this time, I also began to see Steve's true colors. If Steve found out that his wife's grandfather was the chairman, he would likely abuse that power and do whatever he wanted. The one who would suffer for it would be my grandfather. I didn't want to cause any trouble for the grandfather I loved so much, so I kept quiet about it until now. And that's the story. After hearing my full explanation, Steve couldn't come up with a response. Well, given how things have turned out, it was the right decision not to let people know you're part of Carol's family, my grandfather said in a tone of disbelief. Steve bit his lip in frustration, but hung his head, unable to say anything. I glanced over at Jennifer. Around her neck was the necklace that Steve had once claimed was for himself. It had a very cute design and suited Jennifer perfectly. Steve had probably bought her an expensive designer necklace, but accidentally handed it to me instead. While I had been given a cheap necklace, Jennifer was adorned with luxury. This contrast made it clear how little Steve cared about me. Looking back, there had been many signs of his infidelity hidden in our everyday life. Even though I noticed them, I had chosen to turn a blind eye. I was determined to stay with the man I had chosen, no matter what. With that mindset, I continued to ignore the discomfort lurking in my daily life. Had it been just an ordinary affair, I might have considered reconciling with Steve. But this wasn't just any affair. Steve loved Jennifer more, and had even fathered a child in secret. With that, there was only one path to take. I have a lot to say, but for now, we're getting a divorce. I'll be taking custody of Olivia. Wait, please, can't we avoid the divorce? Why? You love Jennifer more than me, right? You've even fathered a child with her, and have been raising that child. Clearly, that child is more important to you than Olivia. So you shouldn't mind divorcing me. But Steve, pale as a sheet, kept looking back and forth between me and my grandfather. Realizing what his gaze meant, I let out a sigh of exasperation and spoke. Are you worried that divorcing me will affect your job? Well, unbelievable. Even now, all you care about is saving yourself. You've got your precious mistress right beside you. My words made Steve frantically turn to Jennifer. Steve, you told me you were going to divorce your wife, didn't you? So why are you now asking her not to go through with it? What about your promise to marry me? I've been waiting this whole time to live with you and our child. No, you've got it all wrong. Steve grabbed Jennifer's shoulders, scrambling to explain himself. Carol doesn't matter to me. Jennifer, you're the only one I truly love. But I have my job. I need to keep working so I can support you and our child, don't I? You don't need to worry about that. My grandfather smiled. Seeing his gentle expression, Steve seemed to think the whole affair would be forgiven, and his face brightened. However, his face quickly fell into despair at my grandfather's next words. You're fired. What? Why are you surprised? It's only natural. You betrayed my granddaughter. Besides, no company can keep employing someone as reckless as you, who brings a mistress and a secret child on a company trip. Once the trip is over, we'll begin the process to terminate your employment. I was surprised by this decision, but when I thought about it, my grandfather was right. If I were the head of a company, there's no way I'd trust someone who cheated, had a secret child, and brought them on a company trip with a straight face. Good work is built on mutual trust. If I were in my grandfather's position, I would have made the same decision. That's an unfair dismissal. What are we supposed to do if Steve loses his job? We'll be in trouble. I'm only a part-timer. Oh, isn't it you who did something wrong? You should receive an appropriate punishment. So why are you acting so high and mighty? My grandfather nodded at my words. Carol is right. If you think it's unfair, you can hire a lawyer and sue us. But if it comes to that, we'll hire a lawyer and fight back. Realizing my grandfather was serious, Jennifer went pale and couldn't say another word. As for Steve, knowing there was no chance of winning, he got down on his knees and begged for my forgiveness. Please, I beg you, forgive me. What exactly are you asking for? Do you really think groveling like this will be enough to make up for your affair and secret child? Steve finally broke down in tears at my merciless response. I'll never do this again. I'll break up with Jennifer. From now on, I'll cherish only Carol and Olivia for the rest of my life. I'll do the housework and child care, and whatever Carol asks of me. So please. It's too late. Those were the words he should have said right after Olivia was born. A long time ago, I had already lost all feelings for Steve, and I no longer needed his help. I don't need you to help with the housework or child care anymore. After all, I have so many strong allies around me now. I looked back at my family members standing behind me. Everyone nodded in agreement with my words. When I looked to my side, Barbary also gave a firm nod. Seeing everyone's faces, I was certain that Olivia and I could live happily without Steve. Neither Olivia or I need you in our lives. We're getting a divorce, and of course, I'll be taking full custody of Olivia. After we divorce, you can go ahead and marry Jennifer. Jennifer was crying, and Steve was trembling, looking like he was about to collapse. They looked pitiful, but I had no sympathy for either of them. I'll never forgive the two of you. You'll pay for what you've done, so be prepared. Running won't help. I'll chase you to the ends of the earth and make sure you're held accountable. That seemed to be the final blow, as both of them crumbled weakly to the ground. After the company trip, my grandfather wasted no time in firing Steve. As for me, after returning from the trip, I packed my things and left with the help of my family. Since the apartment we had been living in was rented under his name, Olivia and I had to move out. The move was tough, but thanks to Barbara and the rest of my family, it went smoothly. Currently, Olivia and I are temporarily living in an apartment we managed to find. At the same time, I filed for divorce against Steve at the court. Steve offered no resistance and accepted everything. In the end, he lost his job as well. At last, I was free from Steve and could officially move on. Incidentally, I didn't ask for child support. I'm not that heartless. Besides, I didn't want to raise Olivia on money from someone who had an affair and an illegitimate child. I work full-time, and I've been earning more than Steve for the past few years anyway. As long as we don't indulge in luxuries, I can raise Olivia on my own. Once all the formalities were completed, Olivia and I left our temporary apartment and moved into a new one that was spacious enough for the two of us. This new apartment is very close to Barbara's house. When I mentioned I wanted to live somewhere calm, Barbara found an apartment near her place and introduced it to me. That way, if anything happens, we can help each other quickly. Right, Barbara? Thank you so much for everything. By the way, according to Barbara, Steve is now working multiple part-time jobs to make ends meet. He's living with no extra money to spare and has become much more haggard than before. Jennifer is also working several part-time jobs and is busy every day. Because of their situation, they apparently can't afford to remarry. Their child is being raised by Jennifer's parents, which gave me some peace of mind. Even though it's a child from an affair, the child is innocent. With everything settled, I'm finally able to live my days in peace. I was worried about how Olivia would handle the divorce, but she turned out to be more mature than I thought. At first, she seemed a little sad, but now she's surrounded by Barbary and my supportive family, and she seems to be happy. All right, let's work hard again today. After seeing Olivia off, I quickly got ready and headed to work. I hope nothing like this ever happens again. But even if it does, I have my strong circle of friends and family, so I'll be okay. Looking up at the sky bathed in the morning light, I smiled.
Get back to work right now or you're fired. I had reserved an expensive steak dinner for the new hires' welcome party, but I was the only one who showed up. Susan, the president's daughter, laughed loudly on the other end of the line. She must have wanted to make me squirm. When I remained silent, Susan chuckled and said, "An old hag like you is always in the way. You're an eyesore, so why don't you just disappear already?" Despite her persistent arrogance, I burst out laughing. "Wow, Susan, you really have such a charming personality, don't you?" I quipped sarcastically. "Huh? At least I'm better than you," Susan retorted. I couldn't stand working with someone like her anymore. I had made up my mind. "I'm going to submit my resignation letter right now," I declared firmly. "Do whatever you want," Susan dismissively replied. For the rest of her life, she would undoubtedly regret this moment. Because Susan had just opened the gates of hell. My name is Linda, and I'm 45 years old this year. The company I joined as a fresh graduate was called Smith Group. Smith Group mainly deals in wholesale food distribution and also operates restaurants. It's a large corporation now, but when I first started, it was a small company with fewer than 10 employees. As a result, my job as a newbie was that of a jack of all trades. I worked in sales, visiting local restaurants without appointments and pitching our company's ingredients for their menus. Once the sales calls were done, I tackled various internal tasks. From payroll calculations to accounting data entry, my responsibilities were extensive and diverse. I often worked late into the night, but I managed to complete all my daily tasks somehow. As I continued to pour my heart into the job, more than 20 years passed by. Smith Group has grown significantly and now employs over 300 people. Every year, when we hold seminars for new graduates, we're flooded with applicants eager to join the company. Over the past 2 decades, the internal operations have become more specialized and compartmentalized. The administrative work I used to handle is now divided among the accounting and general affairs departments. Even the sales division has been split into wholesale and restaurant sales, each with its own dedicated team. Since the responsibilities vary by department, employees regularly rotate positions, gaining experience in different aspects of the business over the years. As I reflect on this, I can't help but feel a deep sense of nostalgia, realizing just how much times have changed. The days when I used to handle a variety of tasks in a single day now feel like a distant dream. Over these past 20 years, I've undergone changes myself. I met a wonderful man outside of work and got married. We were blessed with 2 adorable boys. They're incredibly cute but also quite a handful, and I struggled to keep up with their mischievous antics. Working while raising young children proved to be an immense challenge. After taking maternity leave and parental leave, I returned to work and quickly realized the difficulties of balancing child-rearing and a career. The first hurdle was childcare. I was fortunate enough to secure a spot for my kids at a childcare center, and I returned to the office with a mix of excitement and apprehension. I was determined to make up for the time I had been away on leave and once again excel at my job, just as I had before. However, the path ahead was far from smooth. No sooner had I returned to work when I realized my limitation by the incessant demands of the childcare center. As I juggled my workload, the phone calls from the childcare center came in like clockwork, week after week. Each time the phone rang, my heart sank with disappointment. The reason for the calls was always the same. My child had developed a fever, and they needed me to come pick them up immediately. Every time this happened, I had to apologize to my colleagues and beg them to cover the rest of my work for me. I'm eternally grateful to my single coworkers who, despite their obvious annoyance, always stepped in to help. As this pattern repeated itself over and over, I gradually felt my energy and enthusiasm draining away. No matter how badly I wanted to work the same hours as everyone else, it simply wasn't possible. Even without the constant summons from the childcare center, the time I could dedicate to my job was inherently limited. Due to the restricted hours of childcare, I couldn't work overtime. If I did, I wouldn't be able to pick up my kids at the designated time. As a result, the amount of work I could handle was noticeably less compared to my colleagues. It was an uncomfortable feeling, knowing there was such a discrepancy in workload among employees of the same rank. I was deeply troubled by this dilemma. I couldn't devote any more time to my job than I already was. Yet, it was impossible for me to complete the volume of work that was expected of me. Finally, I made the difficult decision to resign from the company. But then, one fateful day, the president called me into his office, and I found myself listening to words I never could have anticipated. "It's true that you may not be able to work as many hours as other employees, but we'd be in a real bind if she weren't here with us," the president said earnestly. He went on to passionately convey just how much the company needed me. I was deeply moved by his persuasive words. I had no idea that they considered me to be such an indispensable part of the team. Knowing that the president valued me so highly motivated me to work even harder for him and the company. After discussing it with the president and HR, I transitioned from a full-time employee to a contract worker. As a full-time employee, I would have had to work overtime and take on a larger workload. However, as a contract worker, I could leave at the end of my shift without putting in extra hours. I no longer had to feel out of place or uncomfortable at work just because I was a full-time employee like everyone else. Becoming a contract worker helped ease my mind considerably. As a contract worker, I was assigned to the customer service call center department. Every day, I fielded a wide variety of calls, which gave me a strong sense of fulfillment. I also discovered the joy of engaging in conversations with customers. I've been working in this department ever since. Now, even my youngest is in the upper grades of elementary school, and I no longer get called away from work due to their fevers. I'm determined to keep giving my all at work. With renewed resolve, I threw myself into my job. But just as I had steeled my determination, a major event occurred that shook me to my core. A new employee was assigned to my department. Starting today, Susan will be joining the customer service call center department. Everyone, please make her feel welcome, Director Martinez announced, introducing the young woman. "I'm Susan, the president's daughter. I graduated from Harvard University. I'm kind of a big deal, even if I don't look like it. Since I'm the future president, I expect all of you to treat me with the utmost respect," Susan said with a laugh. Susan's introduction caused a commotion among the staff, and I could see that everyone was quite shaken up. It's no wonder, really. If someone suddenly greeted you with such an arrogant attitude, it's only natural to react that way. But Susan was the president's daughter. So, everyone remained silent, unable to say a word. Amid the awkward atmosphere, Director Martinez asked Susan, "So, who would you like to be your mentor? You're an important employee, Susan, so feel free to choose anyone you'd like." Normally, a mentor would be chosen based on their experience and knowledge. Everyone must have been thinking the same thing, but no one dared to say it out loud. "Well, let's see," Susan said, scanning the room. I absolutely did not want to be stuck mentoring Susan. As everyone averted their gaze, my eyes accidentally met Susan's. "What about that person?" Susan asked, pointing at me and turning to Director Martinez. "You mean Linda? She's the only contract employee in our department. She's been here for years, so she's got seniority, if nothing else," Director Martinez replied, emphasizing my employment status to Susan. There seemed to be a hint of malice in the way he introduced me. Susan let out a nasty laugh. "Is that so? So, in a sea of full-time employees, there's just one lone contract worker. She must be pretty incompetent. All right, I think I'll pick her. She seems like she'll be easy to boss around," Susan declared. "Excuse me." I gave Susan a baffled look, taken aback by her incredibly rude attitude. However, Director Martinez didn't seem to pay any mind to my reaction. It's true that Linda has fallen off the elite track. She doesn't work overtime or take on any significant tasks. She's a burden on the company, really. I think she's the perfect choice for you to order around, he said to Susan with a smile, spouting utter nonsense. The other employees, not wanting to get involved in this mess, made no move to help me. Everyone pretended not to notice what was happening. Linda, make sure you don't show any disrespect to Susan, Director Martinez warned. I understand, I replied reluctantly. And just like that, I found myself assigned as Susan's mentor. I later learned that Susan had been hired through the president's connections. Apparently, she'd been offered the job without even going through an interview or written exam. I wonder how things are going to turn out, I muttered to myself, shrugging my shoulders as I envisioned a future fraught with difficulties. From that point on, Susan did whatever she pleased. For starters, she refused to answer any calls, whether they were from within the company or outside. Our customer service call center department primarily handles incoming calls from external customers. At Smith Group, customer service is a top priority, which is why the customer service call center department has the highest number of assigned employees. Our department is located smack in the middle of the office floor, and when all the customer service representatives are occupied with calls, employees from other departments step in to provide support. It doesn't matter if they're from sales or general affairs. That's why answering the phone is the most crucial skill for new hires to master. However, Susan completely disregards this vital aspect of the job. When I try to teach her proper phone etiquette, she can't be bothered. I hand her the talk script, a manual that outlines the predetermined conversation flow for handling calls, but she doesn't even attempt to look at it. Why should I, the future president, have to answer phones? Isn't that a job for the incompetent? Susan scoffs. By incompetent, she means me. Susan has started referring to me as incompetent, echoing Director Martinez's comment about me being a burden on the company. This is beyond disrespectful. At first, I try to protest, but Director Martinez immediately shuts me down. According to him, I mustn't upset Susan. And just like that, Director Martinez starts calling me incompetent too, following Susan's lead. Hey, incompetent! Don't bother Susan. The phone is ringing, so hurry up and answer it. He barks at me. Yes, I reply, reluctantly giving up on trying to guide Susan. Susan and Director Martinez seem to get along swimmingly. Director Martinez, I can't get this to work. Susan calls out. Our company uses time cards to track attendance, but for some reason, Susan can't seem to punch in correctly. It looks like the machine isn't turned on. I'll switch it on right away, and then you should be able to punch in. Director Martinez explains, rushing over to Susan's side the moment she calls for him. Thank you so much, Director Martinez. Phew, all that effort has made me thirsty, Susan says, glancing at Director Martinez. Delighted, he suggests. Well then, let's go to the break room and have some coffee together. It's my treat. Thank you. That would be wonderful. Susan gushes. And just like that, a mere 5 minutes after arriving at work, Susan disappears into the break room with Director Martinez. This becomes an almost daily occurrence. There's no way I can put up with this situation. One day, I couldn't take it anymore and confronted Susan. Susan, I'll compromise and let you call me incompetent. But please, at least do your job properly. As soon as the words left my mouth, Director Martinez turned pale. "How dare you speak to Susan that way? Take it back, immediately!" He sputtered in a panic. Susan let out an irritated sigh. "This company is going to be mine someday, you know? And yet, a mere contract employee has the audacity to talk down to me. That's it, I'm firing you, you incompetent fool. Get out of this office, right now." "What?" I stood there, stunned by Susan's outburst. No matter how much of a president's daughter she might be, there's no way she has the authority to fire an employee. This is completely absurd. Even though I knew that, I couldn't help but worry. What if she really could? I have children to support, and next year my oldest will be taking entrance exams. With all the expenses piling up, I couldn't afford to lose my job now. As I stood there, unable to respond, Susan let out a mocking laugh. "If you apologize sincerely right this instant, I might just forgive you," she said, looking down on me with disdain. "Linda, apologize to her, right now," Director Martinez demanded, trying to force me to beg for forgiveness. "Hurry up!" he barked in a harsh tone. Our coworkers had started to gather, watching the scene unfold. Susan crossed her arms, a nasty smirk playing on her lips. She was clearly relishing this moment. The last thing I wanted to do was apologize to someone like her. But I couldn't risk getting fired, not now. Feeling powerless to defy Director Martinez, I slowly bowed my head. I'm sorry," I mumbled, offering Susan a heartfelt apology in a small voice. Susan watched me, a look of satisfaction on her face. "I'm glad you understand. Well, I'm tired, so I'm going to take a break." With that, Susan started walking towards the break room. "I'll come with you," Director Martinez eagerly volunteered. As Susan was leaving, she leaned in close to me, still bowing in heartfelt apology, and whispered, "How pathetic, an old hag like you groveling like this. Serves you right." I felt tears of frustration welling up in my eyes. This kind of treatment was absolutely unforgivable. After Susan left the floor, I returned to my work, tears streaming down my face. It's been a month since then. Every day has been a living hell. Susan continues to do whatever she pleases, and Director Martinez doesn't reprimand her at all. In fact, he just lets her get away with everything. Each time Susan does something outrageous, I give her a baffled look, but after what happened the other day, I don't dare say anything. Susan takes every opportunity to harass me. "You're fired, you worthless fool." This has become her favorite phrase. Then one day, I receive an order from Director Martinez. "You want me to book a venue for the new employee welcome party?" "That's right. Unlike you, the rest of us are busy, you incompetent. I'm sure you've got plenty of free time, don't you?" Director Martinez said dismissively. Our company holds a welcome party for new hires about 2 months after they join. Since the probationary period lasts 6 months, it's also meant to encourage them to work hard for the remaining time. Rather than a typical ceremony where everyone gathers in a conference room to listen to a speech from the president, our company has a unique style where we deepen friendships over a meal. Back in my day, we didn't have anything like this, so I'm a little envious of the new employees. Understood. Do you have any preferences for the restaurant? I asked. Director Martinez paused for a moment, as if deep in thought, before replying. If I had to choose, I'd say steak. The other new hires are all men, so they'd probably prefer meat. Steak it is. I'll get right on it. With that, I began my search for a suitable restaurant. After much deliberation, I finally decided to make a reservation at a high-end steakhouse. At this restaurant, some of the cuts of meat were priced based on market value, and you could order them by the slice. I thought everyone would be satisfied with such a prestigious establishment. When I informed Director Martinez of my choice, he replied, "I'll contact the higher-ups and the new hires. You're all set." "Understood. Thank you very much," I said. I made the mistake of trusting Director Martinez's words at that time. This would lead to a major incident. On the day of the welcome party, I thought to myself, "Something's not right." Even though it was the scheduled time, no one had arrived. The restaurant staff looked just as confused as I was, glancing at me with puzzled expressions. Suddenly, my cell phone rang. "Hello?" I answered. "How's it feel to enjoy a steak all by your lonesome?" the voice on the other end taunted. To my shock, it was Susan. "How did you get this number? And what about the welcome party?" I asked, bewildered. I had no recollection of ever giving Susan my private cell phone number. Moreover, the time for the welcome party had already passed. As I stood there, at a loss for words, Susan laughed and said, "I got your number from Director Martinez. And don't worry, the welcome party is well underway, at a different venue." Sure enough, I could hear the lively chatter and commotion of a party in the background. "This is horrible. You tricked me," I said, biting my lip. Director Martinez must have conspired with Susan to deceive me. Their behavior was incredibly immature, especially for working professionals. "Get back to work right now or you're fired." Susan barked into the phone, laughing loudly. She must have wanted to make me squirm. When I remained silent, Susan chuckled and said, "An old hag like you is always in the way. You're an eyesore, so why don't you just disappear already?" If someone suddenly spoke to you with such an arrogant attitude, it's only natural to react that way. "Wow, Susan, you really have such a charming personality, don't you?" I quipped sarcastically. "Huh? At least I'm better than you," Susan retorted. I couldn't stand working with someone like her anymore. And Director Martinez, who was supposed to be my superior, was just as awful. Having reached my breaking point, I made a decision. "I'm going to submit my resignation letter right now," I declared firmly. "Do whatever you want," Susan dismissively replied. For the rest of her life, she would undoubtedly regret this moment. Because Susan had just opened the gates of hell. I sincerely apologized to the restaurant staff. A private room for a party of 20 had been abruptly canceled. I was prepared to face their anger, but instead, they sympathized with me and waived the cancellation fee. It probably helped that they had witnessed my phone conversation with Susan just moments ago. "Linda, you didn't do anything wrong. The one at fault is that spoiled president's daughter. So please don't let it get to you." The restaurant staff reassured me, showing genuine concern. "Thank you so much," I said, feeling tears welling up at their kindness. At the same time, my fury towards Susan grew even stronger. After everything she had done, she needed to face consequences. Of course, the same went for Director Martinez, who had been complicit in Susan's scheming. I had no intention of ever forgiving those two. I returned to the office and began writing my resignation letter. I dated it for today. In the letter, I stated that my resignation would be effective immediately. I placed the completed resignation letter on Director Martinez's desk. However, I couldn't risk him simply ignoring the letter I had gone to the trouble of writing. So, I left a copy on someone else's desk as well. Then, I started cleaning out my own desk. A handful of employees who hadn't gone to the welcome party were still in the office, working overtime. Some of them looked at me with concern, but I deliberately ignored them. Disregarding their stares, I gathered my personal belongings and put them in my bag. "Thank you for everything," I quietly murmured before leaving the company for good. The next day, I was at home. A glance at the clock told me that the workday had already begun. So, I'm unemployed now, I mused, feeling oddly relaxed. But my tranquility was short-lived. My cell phone started ringing incessantly. Checking the caller ID, I saw that it was Susan. There were also several missed calls from Director Martinez. "Just as I thought," I said to myself, a smile playing on my lips. The phone kept ringing, even as I ignored it. Still, I continued to disregard the calls. Perhaps realizing that I wouldn't answer my personal phone, they started calling from the office line instead. It seemed that Susan and the others had no intention of giving up. Even if I kept ignoring the calls, the phone would undoubtedly keep ringing off the hook. "I guess I have no choice," I muttered quietly, getting ready to head to the office. "Good morning," I greeted as I stepped into the company. The moment I showed my face, Susan and Director Martinez appeared, their expressions livid. "What the hell have you done?" "Thanks to you, our company is in a huge mess," Susan shouted, her voice full of desperation as she confronted me. I responded to Susan's outburst as if nothing had happened. "What do you mean?" "Yesterday, I told you that I was going to submit my resignation letter. You said, do whatever you want, didn't you, Susan?" Recalling yesterday's events, Susan stumbled over her words. Then, in the next instant, she cried out in distress. "I had no idea. I didn't know you were in charge of handling complaints. Thanks to that, the phone's been ringing off the hook all morning with people asking for you," Susan exclaimed. Director Martinez chimed in, looking equally perplexed. "Even when I try to handle the calls, they insist on speaking to Linda. The other employees can't even do their regular work because of this. Please, just go back to answering the phones." I had to suppress a laugh at this predictable turn of events. Our company's customer service department receives calls from all sorts of customers every day. Director Martinez had only joined our department 6 months ago, so he had no idea what kind of calls I usually handled. He probably assumed that I took the same regular calls as the other employees. However, the reality was quite different. The calls I handled were essentially from complainers. I was responsible for taking the calls that the other employees couldn't handle. Originally, I started working at Smith Group as a jack-of-all-trades. As a result, I had comprehensive knowledge about the company's products and operations. Most of the complaints stemmed from the lack of knowledge of the employees answering the phones. They couldn't provide immediate answers to customers' inquiries. Consequently, they couldn't offer solutions right away. This frustrated the customers, leading to serious complaints. However, I could quickly determine which department to consult for each complaint. The time it took to resolve issues was much shorter, and customers' complaints were quelled in no time. Moreover, these customers often grew even fonder of our company. They also took a liking to me, and whenever they had an issue, they would call and ask for me specifically. But now that I had resigned, none of that mattered anymore. I fixed Director Martinez with a sharp glare. "I clearly stated in my resignation letter that my last day was yesterday. Did you even bother to read it thoroughly?" Flustered, Director Martinez pulled out the resignation letter I had written from his breast pocket. "You mean this? But I haven't accepted your resignation yet." It seemed that Director Martinez was operating under a grave misconception. I firmly conveyed my stance. "What I submitted was not a resignation request, but a resignation letter. It takes effect the moment the company receives it. I don't believe it requires your approval, does it?" "Ugh." Director Martinez faltered, at a loss for words, as if I had hit a sore spot. And another thing, I said, glancing over at Susan. What? Susan glared back at me, not backing down. Hasn't Susan been constantly threatening to fire me at every turn? I apologized sincerely before because I didn't want to lose my job. But I won't be making any heartfelt apologies anymore, so go ahead and fire me if you want. Now that I had made up my mind to resign, I was no longer afraid of Susan. As I stared her down, Susan flinched slightly. Then, ignoring my comment, she said, "Fine, I won't mention firing you anymore. Now hurry up and answer the phones. The other employees are blaming me, and I'm in a bind here." Looking around, I could see that everyone, regardless of their department, was scrambling to handle the influx of calls. The customers who specifically asked for me tended to be rather quirky. They probably wouldn't hang up so easily. Meanwhile, calls from regular customers kept pouring in. As a result, the entire office seemed to be in a state of chaos. I informed Susan, "I've already resigned. The fact that Director Martinez has the resignation letter I wrote means the company has received it, right? Then it's not my problem anymore." "You can't be serious. Then what are we supposed to do about this situation?" Susan shouted, growing hysteric. "I don't know. Figure it out yourselves," I replied firmly. Suddenly, for some inexplicable reason, Director Martinez started tearing up the resignation letter I had written. "What? That's..." I couldn't hide my shock at Director Martinez's actions. As I stood there, bewildered, Director Martinez finished shredding the letter and began to laugh. "There, the resignation letter has been destroyed, so Linda's resignation is void. Now that you understand, hurry up and get back to answering the phones." Susan, who had also been caught off guard by Director Martinez's behavior, smirked at me once she realized his intentions. "Too bad things didn't go according to your plan. Now, be a good girl and answer the phones," Susan ordered me. These two were truly beyond help. They both had this smug look on their faces, as if they had bested me. As I was contemplating how to settle this once and for all, a voice rang out. "That's enough." It was the president. "Mr. President!" "Dad?" Director Martinez and Susan were shocked by the president's sudden appearance. The president was usually so busy that he rarely spent time at the main office during the day. He swiftly pulled out an envelope. "I also found a resignation letter from Linda on my desk. What is the meaning of this, Director Martinez?" Director Martinez looked flustered, trying to come up with an excuse to give the president. "Well, you see, Mr. President, this is..." But he seemed to be at a loss for words, unable to come up with a plausible explanation. The president pressed further, putting Director Martinez in an even tighter spot. "The reasons for her resignation were written out in great detail. It says here that you forced her to apologize sincerely for absurd reasons. That's a clear violation of compliance regulations. What do you have to say for yourself?" "Mr. President, I am deeply sorry," Director Martinez said, bowing profusely to the president. He looked cornered, his face pale and beads of sweat forming on his forehead. The president regarded Director Martinez with a look of exasperation. Then he turned his glare on Susan. "It seems you've been doing whatever you please, Susan. I hired you out of pity when you said you'd been fired from another company." "I'm sorry." Susan hung her head and began apologizing to the president. As it turned out, Susan wasn't actually a candidate for the next president. The president had simply hired her out of sympathy. Confirming this fact, the president spoke. Our company values merit above all else. We have no need for people who don't do their jobs properly. It's not Linda who should be leaving the company, but you too." At the president's declaration, Director Martinez looked like he was about to cry. "Mr. President, please, I beg you. I still have a mortgage to pay off on my house," he pleaded, clinging to the president. Susan also desperately tried to reason with the president. "Dad, I'll work really hard from now on. Please don't talk about firing me." But the president wouldn't budge. "And another thing," the president continued. "That high-end steakhouse you took it upon yourselves to cancel? It's one of the restaurant brands our company operates," the president revealed. "What?" Susan looked stunned. I spoke to her, exasperated. "You don't even know your own father's company? That restaurant is one of the brands we're really focusing on. That's why I made the reservation." In fact, that particular steakhouse was slated for expansion, and it was currently the main restaurant brand our company was putting the most effort into. Since it was one of our company's restaurants, the staff had been gracious enough to overlook the sudden cancellation. Director Martinez originally worked in the General Affairs Department, so it was understandable if his knowledge of the restaurant brands was limited. But Susan had gone so far as to boast about being a candidate for the next president. Normally, you'd expect someone in that position to be familiar with their company's brands and main products. "I had no idea," Susan muttered under her breath. "Because of this last-minute cancellation, all the ingredients the restaurant had purchased for the event will go to waste. Not to mention the labor costs for the staff who were supposed to be on duty to accommodate the reservation I made. If the reservation hadn't been in place, they might have been able to accept bookings from other customers. Susan, you rendered all of that meaningless." I chided her in a stern tone. Hearing my words, Susan turned deathly pale. Her selfish actions had caused trouble for her own father. The president, looking appalled, said, "We don't need employees who lack the drive to improve. Do as you please." His statement hinted at their dismissal. The president wasn't one to change his mind so easily. Realizing this, Director Martinez and Susan redirected their focus towards me. "Linda, can't you put in a good word for us with Dad? If you agree to come back to the company, everything can go back to normal," Susan said, approaching me with a smile. "That's right. Linda, tell him that I'm an essential part of this company. Then you can keep working here like before," Director Martinez suggested, grinning at me. I smiled back at the two of them. Mistaking my reaction for compliance, Susan and Director Martinez returned my smile. But reality wasn't so kind. "As long as incompetent people like you are here, I will never come back to this company," I declared firmly. "Yes." "I'm so sorry," Susan and Director Martinez said, their shoulders slumped in defeat. After that, both Susan and Director Martinez were fired from the company. I heard that Director Martinez's wife had served him with divorce papers. As it turned out, Susan and Director Martinez had been romantically involved. Their affair had apparently come to light during this whole fiasco, and Director Martinez's wife had found out. Although Director Martinez had apologized to his wife repeatedly, she had packed her bags and moved back in with her parents. Now, he was embroiled in a bitter dispute with his wife over the divorce and the compensation settlement. However, having been fired from the company, Director Martinez was strapped for cash. On top of that, he still had a mortgage to pay off on his house. Given the circumstances, he seemed to be in a truly miserable situation. Director Martinez had pleaded with me countless times. "Linda, Please ask the president to let me return to Smith Group. But I had no intention of ever forgiving Director Martinez. So lately, I had been ignoring his calls. I also heard rumors that Susan was in dire straits. Apparently, she had been kicked out of her family home because of this incident. This whole mess is my fault for spoiling my daughter. I've decided to cut ties with Susan. The president confided in me. With no home and no job, Susan seemed to be in a truly desperate situation. I had received numerous calls from Susan on my cell phone. Please, convince Dad to change his mind. This whole thing started because you went and submitted that resignation letter on your own, didn't it? I didn't do anything wrong. Susan insisted, urging me to mediate with the president on her behalf. But I had no desire to act as a go-between for her. This is the result of your compliance violations, isn't it, Susan? You caused a lot of trouble for the company, too. Don't you think you should reflect on your actions a little? I told her dispassionately. But Susan, unwilling to accept this, tried to argue with me. But still, I decided to be direct with her. And do you really think you have time to be leisurely calling me? I heard that Director Martinez's wife found out about you, and she's planning to sue for even more compensation in the divorce settlement. As soon as I said that, Susan's voice trembled with fear. Never mind. Bye, she said abruptly and hung up the phone. Despite being sued by Director Martinez's wife for compensation in the divorce settlement, it seems Susan is running away from her responsibilities. Rumor has it that Director Martinez's wife is determined to see this through and is preparing for court. If Susan keeps running away like this, she might face a future where her assets are seized. It's the punishment for her actions. I hope she takes this opportunity to reflect deeply on her behavior. After that, I returned to Smith Group. To be honest, I could have easily found a job at another company, but the president had persuaded me to stay. There's no one else but you, Linda. Please, won't you come back to the company? He had pleaded desperately, and I couldn't bring myself to refuse. Now, I'm working hard as the director of the customer service call center department, taking over Director Martinez's role. Of course, I'm back as a full-time employee. And of course, my family is cheering me on. I'm sure there will be many more difficulties ahead. But each time, I want to face them head-on and do my best. Who are you? Let's fire you. Eloise, the president's daughter, fired me without knowing that I was responsible for 90% of the company's sales. This company is done for. I left the company and decided to join a rival company that reached out to me. When Nate, the president, found out, he turned pale. He tried to explain the situation, but it was too late. The president was furious with his daughter, and after Eloise's rash actions. I'm Marjorie, 43 years old. I'm an employee at a real estate company. I've been working hard since joining this company. Before I found this company, I had been jumping from job to job, but none of them felt quite right. I was either stuck with menial tasks because I'm a woman, or when I joined a company to escape that, I was overwhelmed with overtime and couldn't have a life of my own. But since coming to this company, I've been able to live the life I want. It's all thanks to Nate, the CEO of this company, who puts us employees first. I'm truly glad I was able to join this company. Feeling a sense of gratitude, I took the initiative to work on various projects for the company. Nate recognized my achievements and even started teaching me the role of president, saying he wants to eventually leave the company to me. I was throwing myself into this job more and more to make sure I wouldn't let it fail on my watch. However, a change came to that life. That change was brought about by Eloise, the president's daughter. Her appearance would slightly alter my life here. I met Eloise when Nate was away on a long-distance trip. I was put in charge as acting president and was determined to support the company well while Nate was gone. That morning, I arrived at the company and was about to greet everyone to let them know I had become acting president, but Eloise had already made a move one step ahead of me. While my dad is away, I've become the acting president of this company. Everyone, work hard. An email with that message was sent to everyone's computer in the company. I saw it in the vice president's office, where I usually spend my time. Shocked, wondering what was going on, Eloise barged into the room without even knocking. "Hey, who are you? Why are you squatting in the vice president's office without permission?" I was even more surprised and insisted that this was my workroom. Eloise heard that and raised her eyebrows in displeasure. "Huh? Why are you, a non-relative, the vice president? Are you just calling yourself that on your own? No way! I could never do that. Shut up. Just get out of here. While my dad's gone, I'm using this room to work." "What?" I was shocked and dumbfounded. When I asked if she had been appointed by Nate, Eloise puffed out her chest and said yes. I was even more surprised and wondered what Nate was thinking. But if Nate said so, I had no choice but to obey. With that in mind, I was about to leave the room with all my work tools when Eloise stopped me as I put my hand on the door and ordered me to go buy her a drink. "I'm busy, and starting today, you're my errand runner. Come immediately when I call for you." "But I'm busy too, you know? You're hired by my dad, right? That means you're below me. Do as I say." I was furious with Eloise's outrageous remarks, but not wanting to get involved in any more trouble, I did as she said for now and bought her a drink. Eloise smiled with satisfaction. Wondering what kind of work she was going to do, I casually glanced back as I was leaving the room and saw her starting to immerse herself in makeup and nail care without doing any work. On top of that, she even brought in fashion magazines, and the spacious desk I usually used was cluttered in an instant. Suppressing the urge to sigh, I headed to the president's office for the time being. I let the president know I wanted to use the president's office and got to work as usual. In the afternoon, I headed to the vice president's office to get some documents. I knocked several times but got no response. As I called out and opened the door, I found Eloise sprawled out asleep on the guest sofa. Surprised, I hurried over and woke her up, asking what in the world she was doing. Eloise looked at me and ordered me to go buy her lunch. "You should at least buy and bring me lunch before I have to order you to." Eloise said that, explaining that she fell asleep because she was hungry since I didn't bring her lunch even after noon had passed. I tried telling her to go buy her own lunch, but Eloise wouldn't listen. In the end, she was being so stubborn that I reluctantly went to the convenience store to get her food. When I handed it to her, Eloise yelled at me to obey her from the start without fighting back. "Why don't you listen to what I say? I'm going to be the next president, so you should be flattering me." "What? Next president? What are you talking about? What kind of nonsense are you spouting? My dad is the president of this company, right? So of course I'll be the next president." I wanted to say she was the one spouting nonsense, but I held back and explained that I couldn't come at lunch because I was dealing with a client in the morning that ran long. After that, I was immediately invited to lunch by the president of another company and went there, so I didn't have time to come here. Eloise glared at me with sharp eyes. "Wait a minute, what does that mean? You went out without telling me, and on top of that, you were treated to lunch by the president of another company? I can't believe you did that instead of me." I had been invited for a while, so it would have been rude to refuse. "Don't mess with me. Next time you do something on your own, I won't forgive you." Eloise threw a fit and began berating me, saying that even though I only gave her, the future president, convenience store food, I was living it up. "Even though you can't do your job properly, don't slack off." Eloise shouted that last bit and angrily kicked me out of the vice president's office. I was baffled by Eloise's sudden appearance and horrible attitude. She was hogging the vice president's office without doing any work. I wondered what she was thinking, and the words almost came out of my throat. But for Nate's sake, I couldn't treat her with disdain, so I had no choice but to swallow my anger. For the next few days, Eloise continued her tyrannical management of the company. She set unreasonable quotas for employees, increased unnecessary work to increase their overtime, and was just a total mess. Furthermore, she would personally go lecture employees with low sales, yelling at them as an outlet for her stress without providing any solutions for improvement. If anyone argued even a little, she threatened to fire them at any time because she was Eloise. When threatened with being fired, no one could go against her, and Eloise became even more carried away. Behind the scenes, every employee was starting to lament that they couldn't keep up with her. Still, Eloise refused to change her thinking and berated us for being incompetent employees if we couldn't keep up. I was eagerly awaiting Nate's return. Then one day, I was summoned by Eloise. Thinking I would be made to do menial tasks again, I headed to the vice president's office where Eloise was. As soon as I entered, Eloise demanded that I prostrate myself on the spot. Dumbfounded, she screamed at me to hurry up and do it. Startled by her loud voice, I immediately groveled on the spot and protested, asking what the purpose of making me do this was. Then Eloise asked me this. "I heard you're using the president's office now. What are you thinking?" "I have permission from the president. Because you're using this room." "I've been thinking for a while, but you're really shameless. Why are you acting so high and mighty?" "What?" I was shocked and looked up at Eloise with my mouth agape. Then Eloise started saying it was strange for me to use the president's office because she was going to be the next president. I explained that I had been entrusted with the role of vice president by the president and had also been appointed as the next president. I asked if Eloise would become president after that. "What are you saying? I'm going to be the president of this company. There's not a single opening for you." "But Eloise, you don't know anything about the work, right? I've also been appointed as the next president and am studying now. It's not something that can be done overnight to run the company and support it. I think it takes a reasonable amount of time to support the company and study business management." "Don't be ridiculous. I'm the president's daughter, you know? When my dad retires, that right should naturally be passed to me." "That can't be right. When Nate becomes chairman, the title of president will be passed to me, who has been appointed as his successor. Then, while I support the company, I'll teach you, the vice president, the work, and you'll become president. So from that day on, you shouldn't be able to become president unless you start your own company." I tried to explain it to Eloise as simply as possible, but she wouldn't accept it. Instead, she constructed a non-existent conspiracy theory that I was trying to take over the company and yelled at me to get out of the company right now. I said I couldn't quit the company so easily because I had a position, but Eloise's face turned red with anger and she wouldn't listen. "Have some shame for trying to take over the company. I won't let you get away with it." Spitting out those words with a malicious smile, Eloise ordered me to stand up. And as soon as I stood up, she let out a scream loud enough to be heard down the hallway. I could hear the hurried footsteps of employees nearby rushing over. As an employee opened the door, Eloise deliberately fell on her bottom and started crying. "Stop it, Marjorie! Everything is my fault, so please forgive me." "What?" "Someone kick Marjorie out of this room. She tried to hurt me because she doesn't like the way I do things." I was bewildered by the false story she made up. The few employees who had rushed over also looked at each other and for the time being told me to go outside. I pleaded that I hadn't done anything, but in a loud voice that drowned out my words, Eloise started saying that I had always been harassing her and that all her tyrannical behavior until now had been orchestrated by me. I was so scared that I had no choice but to obey, not knowing what would happen to me if I didn't. But I can't take it anymore. I'm going to sue you," Eloise declared that with tears in her eyes and glared at me resentfully. Surprised by the sudden turn of events, I couldn't argue back and could only watch the scene in a daze. Glancing around, I saw the other employees there looking at me with skeptical expressions. I pleaded that it was a misunderstanding, but everyone averted their eyes and wouldn't listen to me. The next day, I headed to the vice president's office to confront Eloise. However, she was not there. I peeked into the president's office and saw Eloise sitting in the president's chair looking at me. "What was that all about yesterday? Falsely accusing me is going too far. Thanks to that, the other employees are avoiding me now too." Then Eloise snorted, stared at me for a while, then let out an exaggerated sigh. Who are you? Let's fire you. What? I let out a surprised, odd-sounding voice. Then Eloise started saying she didn't know me and asking what I was thinking, sneaking into the company when I wasn't an employee. Eloise's outrageous attitude made me feel anger bubbling up from the pit of my stomach. Cut it out already. What are you trying to do? Scary. I'll have to call everyone again for help. Please listen to me seriously. Don't yell at me. I don't know you. Even if I did, you've been fired, so can you please hurry up and leave the company? Eloise laughed with a smirk, and I got angry and decided to accept her story. Either way, a company that considers someone like her as a president is not a decent company. I've been with them for a long time, but I never thought I'd end up leaving like this. And Eloise will experience firsthand what happens when I leave the company. This company is done for. With a feeling of resignation, I gathered my belongings and quickly left the company. Then I made a phone call to a certain place. A few days later, I received a call from Nate on my cell phone. By that time, I had already changed jobs, so I reluctantly answered the phone. Why did you quit the company? Nate said in a panicked tone and begged me to give him some time because he wanted to talk right away. I accepted Nate's request and told him I would wait at a designated location. Nate heard the name of the place, gasped in surprise. Then a few hours later, Nate showed up at the company I now work for, along with Eloise. It was Nate's company's rival. I had joined the rival company immediately after the incident with Eloise. Originally, they had approached me before, but I kept declining. But after being unfairly fired from the company and feeling angry, I made an appointment with this company. The president of the rival company listened to my story and accepted me right away. Furthermore, he announced that he had headhunted me and decided to give me a position as well. I was surprised that they went that far for me, but they said I was a talent they didn't want to let go, and my simple self was honestly happy and determined to do my best at this company going forward. And along with me, several employees also joined this rival company. The employees who joined with me all said they couldn't keep up if Eloise became the next president and that they would follow me. I was a bit troubled, but since the employees who gathered were all excellent talents, I told the president of the rival company that they wouldn't be a loss and decided to have them hired as well. I was impressed by the generosity of the rival company's president. When I told that story, Nate turned pale and his body trembled. However, Eloise didn't take the situation seriously and glared at me with a snobby face. We don't need traitors anymore. Dad, now that we know the situation, let's hurry up and go home. Eloise said that and gave me a cold look, but Nate, who was sitting next to her, raised his eyes and scolded Eloise. Doing whatever you want. Are you trying to ruin my company? Is there a problem? Sure, it's infuriating that the other employees are taken, but even if we're short on talent, we can just fill in the gaps with new hires, right? Don't mess around. You don't understand anything. And when did I ever say I would make you president? Huh? I'm your daughter, you know? It's only natural that I'll become president after you retire. Plus, I'll eventually inherit your estate and company, right? Eloise said that and looked at Nate with her chest puffed out. However, Nate scolded her, telling her not to say such foolish things. Even if the inheritance is passed to you, I won't give you the company. In the first place, there's no way I would consider handing over the company to someone who doesn't even know what my company does. I've already appointed Marjorie as the next president. What? But she's not a relative, right? Why would you give the company to an outsider? That's ridiculous. What are you saying? Even if they're not a relative, they have the right to become president. And it's not just simply handing over the company. I was going to take on the role of chairman and have her be the president. Hearing the president's words, Eloise was dumbfounded. Apparently, she had mistakenly believed that only relatives had the right to inherit the company. The president said in an exasperated tone that there was no way she could handle being president when she had never even worked before. So what if I don't know? I can just learn from now on, right? In the first place, the company won't go under just because this ordinary female employee is gone. To make up for her absence, we can just hire other people to fill in. You really don't know anything, do you? If you wanted to be president, I thought you would at least check the sales a little. In the first place, Marjorie is responsible for nearly 90% of the company's sales. So if she's gone, the company will quickly decline. Even if it doesn't go under, our earnings will drop significantly and our foundation will become fragile. What? This plain-looking middle-aged woman brings in that much sales. Eloise turned a surprised face towards me. She was making a face that practically demanded an explanation, so I briefly talked about my work. Then Eloise screamed that she couldn't do so many things at once, so I had to come back and teach her from square one. I sighed and told her that since I was suddenly fired, I couldn't properly hand things over, so she would struggle from now on and to do her best on her own. Don't mess with me. Quit this company right now and hurry up and come back. Once you're done teaching me everything, I won't need you anymore, so fulfill your duties until then. You're being way too irresponsible. I didn't want to quit either. But you're the one who forced me to resign, right? And then, adding insult to injury, you falsely accused me and told me to never come near the company again, right? Who's the irresponsible one? Eloise tried to argue after hearing my words, but Nate cut her off and yelled. Eloise was startled by his voice, flinched in fear, and then sulked and hung her head. Glaring sideways at Eloise, the president begged me. I'll never let this kind of mistake happen again. I won't let my daughter get involved with the company. So please, won't you come back? I'll give you the same position here that you were given there, and I'll pay you more than that company, so please reconsider. Nate bowed his head so deeply it looked like he would hit the desk. Eloise was also restrained by Nate and made to bow deeply. I told Nate with furrowed brows. I'm sorry, but I was accepted by this company and even given an important position. On top of that, they also accepted the employees who followed me. I can't repay that kindness with betrayal. So I won't go back. Hearing those words, Nate hung his head with a desperate look on his face. Eloise finally seemed to understand the gravity of the situation and started crying, saying she would never do this again and asking for forgiveness for her past behavior. I clearly told her that I still wouldn't go back. In the first place, they were the ones who treated me horribly, so I told Nate to make sure Eloise took responsibility. Hearing those words, Nate forgot all reason and yelled at Eloise. Eloise turned pale at the terrifying sight and wailed like a child, apologizing. Still, Nate must have been in great shock, as he kept blaming Eloise with tears streaming down his face. How do you plan to take responsibility for doing this? Scolded by Nate, Eloise offered to work to make up for it. However, Nate wouldn't allow it. You're not my daughter anymore. I'm disowning you. I never want to see your face again. Dad, not that. I've never worked before. I can't live on my own. Eloise clung to Nate with tears in her eyes, but Nate shook off his daughter and scolded her with bloodshot eyes. No, I won't forgive you. Do you really understand the gravity of what you've done? It's not a loss that you can recover from overnight. You ruined the company I've dedicated my life to and trampled on our efforts. Running a company means supporting the livelihoods of all the employees. And in just a few days, you've ruined the lives of hundreds of employees, including me. There's something wrong with you. At Nate's words, Eloise fell to her knees, dumbfounded and frozen. Still unable to give up, Eloise turned her eyes to me, as if clinging to me. But I must have been looking at Eloise with the same cold eyes as Nate. As if to escape that gaze, Eloise quickly averted her eyes. It will cause trouble for the company if you make a scene, so please take your leave now. I told the two of them in an exasperated tone. Hearing my words, they quietly left the company. Afterwards, it seems Eloise was truly disowned. All the brand name goods and accessories she had bought with Nate's earnings were confiscated, and she was even kicked out of the house. It must be very difficult for her to live under the harsh scrutiny of society, having never worked before and never struggled with money. According to rumors I heard through the grapevine, she's apparently using a rundown apartment as a base and working day and night, juggling a supermarket and factory job. Meanwhile, Nate is doing his best to get the company back on track. He had said he planned to retire as president soon, but thanks to Eloise ruining that plan, it's been pushed back a bit. Thanks to Nate's desperate efforts, sales have dropped, but it seems the employees have been spared from being out on the streets. As for me, I've regained a peaceful life, working at my new company every day. Actually, I'm married, but my husband and I have been living separately for a long time. It's not that we were living apart because we had a bad relationship, but to respect each other's lives. But just the other day, we decided to live together. My husband brought up the idea of living together. When I asked him why, he shyly told me that his work was settling down, so he wanted to try living as a married couple with me. Of course, I agreed. We immediately moved into a house where we could live together, and on weekends we go to the movies and out to eat, living a fulfilling life. Don't you dare speak, you uneducated fool. All the credit goes to me, Gianna snapped. She had barged into my $20 million deal that I'd been working on. Gianna, an Ivy League graduate and my manager, always harassed me about my education. And now, she was trying to steal the credit for the $20 million deal I had worked so hard on. Furious, I decided to fight back. My name is Nyla. I'm a 40-year-old company employee. It may sound strange coming from me, but I've been good at studying since I was a child. Zechariah, my dad, wanted me to go to college, and I myself wanted to graduate from one. However, when I was in 7th grade, the company my dad worked for downsized, and our circumstances changed drastically. Dad found a new job quickly, but his salary was significantly lower, and Mom had to take on more part-time work. To make matters worse, we had just bought a new house. Our savings had run out, and the mortgage weighed heavily on us, putting our household finances in a tight spot. Eventually, we had to sell the house after just a year and move into a rundown place. In just 1 year, the value of the house had dropped, and even after selling it, my parents lamented that we still had a mortgage to pay off. After entering public high school, I also started working part-time to support our household, but Dad, stressed out, became addicted to gambling and started wasting money. Because of that, we couldn't save any money, and my college prospects became bleak. I'm truly sorry. Please go to work, Dad said, bowing his head, and I reluctantly decided to get a job. Even if I could have gone to college, I would have needed to take out student loans and work a considerable amount of part-time. Realizing that a very difficult college life was inevitable, I gave up. And so, I started working at my current company. Fortunately, I was blessed with good seniors and steadily built my career. Most of my colleagues were high school graduates, so I wasn't discriminated against for my education. Now, my achievements have been recognized, and I've been entrusted with a $20 million deal. It's rare for such a big job to come to a small company like ours. I'm determined to make it a success, but there's someone who's been getting in my way, causing me a big headache. That person is Gianna. Gianna is a 50-year-old manager who joined the company 3 years ago. She's a graduate of a prestigious state university and apparently worked as a manager at her previous job too. Hiram, the president, had high hopes for her impressive background and promoted her to manager right away. However, many employees, including myself, were skeptical of that decision. Our company often fails to get good results even when hiring highly educated people. According to an employee in HR, people who graduate from prestigious universities aim for top-tier companies. It's rare for talented individuals to come to an unknown small or medium-sized company like ours. The highly educated people who come to us are always the ones who failed the selection process at big companies. The truly talented ones get hired by famous companies. There may be some bias in this opinion, but I agree. In fact, the highly educated people who came to our company were all folks who had applied to big corporations but turned out to be completely useless. Moreover, many of them blamed the environment, saying that the big companies and the job hunting system were messed up. It's obvious they have personality problems. However, President Hiram is the type who values academic background, so he hires people quite easily just because they graduated from a prestigious state university. Hiram insists. From what I hear from other company presidents, university graduates seem to be more capable. From now on, we're going to focus on academic credentials. He won't listen to HR's opinion that we should look at their character. Gianna is also someone who got a job with us thanks to Hiram. At first, she was very polite and did her job properly. For once, we got a good hire, the HR staff said in surprise, and I felt ashamed for having prejudice. Gianna was amazingly successful, leading a major project and closing deals one after another just a year after joining the company. She was undoubtedly a major asset to the company, and Hiram was happy to have her as an indispensable part of the team. I've worked at various places and don't have a family. This company accepted me, so I'll keep doing my best. I was convinced things would continue to go well. But about a year and a half after she joined, Gianna's attitude gradually became more arrogant. She would spit out harsh words like, "You can't even do this? Why are you making such mistakes? Go back to elementary school," hurting her subordinates. Now she casually says things like, "The uneducated should just shut up and do as I say." As Gianna's direct supervisor, I'm no exception to her verbal abuse. You're a high school graduate? I'm surprised you made it into society. I'd be too ashamed to even walk outside. She tells me almost every day, and my stress keeps building. At first, I wondered if something painful had happened to Gianna, but that doesn't seem to be the case. I've been pretending to be a good person since I joined the company. I let you uneducated folks have it easy, so from now on, you'll do as I say. She arrogantly ordered me during work one day. It seems this self-centered attitude is her true nature. I had heard about her cruelty from people who worked with her at her previous job. She blames her own mistakes on others and slacks off at work. It was really tough, said a male employee who had been Gianna's colleague, with a distant look in his eyes. Just as he said, Gianna constantly pushes responsibility onto others. The other day, she was late to a meeting because she got the time wrong, but she blamed her subordinates, saying, "It's your fault for not letting me know properly. Everyone's working overtime today." Furthermore, she claims that the fact that she's jumped from job to job is entirely the fault of those around her. I mean, I'm just saying what I think, you know? And yet, everyone always ostracizes me, she says, as if she's the victim, but it's because Gianna's personality is warped that no one accepts her. I wished she would have just kept pretending to be a good person, even if it was a lie. That character is too stressful, so I'm not doing it anymore. Erase it from your memory, Gianna said dismissively, so I probably won't ever see it again. Anyway, there's no sign of Gianna's attitude improving, but that's not the only problem. Incredibly, Gianna has become a leader-like figure to the other highly educated employees and has started inciting them to rebel against the company. You all are geniuses who worked hard at your studies. And yet, it's ridiculous that you're working at such a shabby company for such low pay. It's all the company's fault, she says. She treats the less educated so coldly, and then turns around and sweet-talks the highly educated like this. It's astonishing. Our highly educated employees tend to blame others for their own issues. Thanks to Gianna, that tendency has gotten even stronger, and they've started hurling abuse at other employees at every turn. We're working for lower pay than others our age. Be grateful. The uneducated are in a position to support the highly educated. If we highly educated folks make a mistake, it's the uneducated's mistake too. They say, spouting such nonsense that it's truly sickening. What's more, they've even started standing up to Hiram recently. They claim that because they're highly educated, they should get a raise, but we're a small to medium-sized company. There's no way we can easily raise salaries, and even Hiram is struggling with this. I have part-time job experience from college, so factor that into my evaluation too. I'm going on a month-long trip starting tomorrow, so pay for my travel expenses. He's at his wit's end with these unreasonable demands. Hiram seems to be realizing that his thinking was wrong and has even started talking about changing the hiring policy. I think that's a good thing, but the real problem is that Gianna's rampage won't stop. Lately, she's been putting her energy into stealing her subordinates' achievements, and her behavior has gotten even worse. This is work that was only possible because I, as your supervisor, supported you, right? It's no exaggeration to say it's my achievement, and if you go against me, who knows what will happen. Gianna is threatening her subordinates and forcibly creating her own accomplishments. Currently, she doesn't do any work and only engages in this sort of worthless behavior, so the frustration of the high school graduate employees is at its peak. And then one day, she targeted me too. That $20 million deal you're handling, I heard you're meeting with a client in a week. I'll sit in too and summarize the discussion for you. Huh? Wouldn't that be an inconvenience to them? Gianna was grinning, and it was clear she intended to steal the credit for my work. I wanted to stop her at all costs, but I already contacted the client, saying it's a really important discussion. They said it would be reassuring to have me there too, and that they were thinking of asking me to join from their side. Is that so? If that's what the client wants, I guess it can't be helped. Besides, no matter what I say, it'll be impossible to convince Gianna. For the time being, I backed down, but I didn't feel like having her join half-heartedly either. This is our company's most important business negotiation. Please thoroughly read through the materials beforehand and be well prepared. I copied the materials for Gianna's portion and handed them to her. Huh? Who do you think I am? I'll do it without you telling me something so obvious. Gianna seemed to be greatly offended at being given instructions by me, a high school graduate. Every day until the negotiation, she made snide remarks about it. And on the day of the negotiation, she looked down on me with a hateful smile, saying, "Don't you dare speak, you uneducated fool. All the credit goes to me." Even after going to the client's company and entering the designated meeting room, the verbal abuse didn't stop. It's presumptuous for an uneducated person to handle a $20 million deal. I'll do everything, so you just sit there like a piece of furniture. As she grumbled this sort of thing next to me, I finally got seriously angry. Understood. I just replied with that and actually stayed silent. In my heart, I was determined to strike back for sure. Then, the door immediately opened, and Frederick and Harding from the client company came in. Frederick is a slender, middle-aged man wearing glasses who works as a department manager. Harding is a well-built young man who, although inexperienced, is a capable person. When the two greeted us, Gianna also politely bowed her head. "Thank you for your time today. My name is Gianna." She even showed a friendly smile, which was unimaginable from her usual arrogant attitude. "Well then, let's get started with the business discussion right away." Gianna opened the materials and started her explanation. She spoke very smoothly, and there were no issues with her wording. Come to think of it, when Gianna first joined our company, she was a capable employee. Although she's become the worst employee due to her rotten nature, if she just uses her acting skills, she can give a good impression. Frederick and Harding weren't showing any particularly unpleasant expressions and were listening intently to the explanation. If nothing goes wrong, we should be able to seal the contract today, so I was thinking that maybe Gianna alone could somehow handle it when. Excuse me, but this part here, isn't it different from the previous explanation? Harding pointed to the materials. It was a part that had been revised during the stage when we were reviewing the contract details. Huh? Gianna hurriedly looked at the materials but started fidgeting, not knowing what to do. She had jumped into this job about a week ago, so she doesn't really know much about the past negotiations. I had summarized the important parts to Gianna, but Harding's question was about a very specific detail that I hadn't told her. I apologize. As for that, I'll have Nyla answer. Gianna turned to me with a smile, putting pressure on me. Even though she told me to be quiet the moment she's in trouble, she tries to push it onto me. I let out a sigh internally, but decided not to speak as instructed. Oh my, what's wrong, Nyla? Please answer Harding's question. After saying that with a smile, Gianna angrily whispered. Answer the client's question, in a very small voice. Nyla isn't feeling well today and can't really speak. Gianna made up that lie, trying to somehow gloss over it, but Frederick and Harding weren't convinced. Just as I was thinking of speaking up, Harding started talking first. Isn't Nyla following Gianna's your instruction not to speak? Huh? Instruction? Gianna seemed flustered, not having expected that conversation to be overheard. I was also surprised by this unexpected development. I apologize for Gianna's inappropriate remarks. It's just as you say, Harding. When I immediately apologized, Harding made a face as if to say, I knew it. I arrived in front of the meeting room a bit earlier than Frederick. At that time, I heard a voice saying, Don't you dare speak, you uneducated fool. All the credit goes to me. I doubted my ears, but it seems I didn't mishear after all. Oh, that was just, a joke. Gianna averted her eyes and waved her hands meaninglessly. She probably wants to somehow smooth it over, but that's pointless. Sure enough, Frederick's eyes sharpened behind his glasses. Gianna, even as a joke, isn't that going too far? No, well, actually, I didn't make such a remark at all. Gianna told an obvious lie. Harding must have misheard. Or Nyla and Harding are conspiring to frame me. No, it's not my misunderstanding, and we're not conspiring either. I definitely heard you say, Don't you dare speak, you uneducated fool. All the credit goes to me. Gianna widened her eyes as if to say she was appalled. I also heard you say, It's presumptuous for an uneducated person to handle a $20 million deal. I'll do everything, so you just sit there like a piece of furniture. Harding's ears seem to be reliable, as he's reproducing exactly what Gianna said. Harding was apparently in the drama club in college and was good at memorizing lines. Even at work, he remembers instructions he's heard once very accurately. Frederick added insult to injury. With nowhere to run, Gianna put on an awkward, stiff smile. Oh, drama club. He looks more like he was in the judo club. Having a good memory is quite something. Stop laughing and hurry up and apologize. When Frederick told her off bluntly, Gianna made a startled face and bowed her head repeatedly. I'm very sorry. I got carried away. I had heard bad rumors about you for a while, but to think it was this bad. Upon hearing Frederick's words, Gianna made an unbelieving face. Huh? But I've never worked at your company. You've done business with our company, right? Remember, when you were at a different company. Even when Frederick said that, Gianna didn't seem to catch on. I certainly was employed there and had dealings with your company, but I didn't do anything rude. The worst was maybe being a bit loud at a drinking party. The problem was that drinking party. Frederick glared at Gianna. I heard you said all sorts of terrible things, like how high school graduates and below don't deserve to walk the streets. Huh? Did I say something like that? Gianna seemed confused and truly didn't remember. She probably just thoughtlessly said whatever she was thinking. I heard that when they demanded an apology the next day, you just made excuses and were very insincere. Because of that, you infuriated our rep and the contract was cancelled. It's true the contract was voided, but that's because they got angry for some incomprehensible reason. I did nothing wrong. Unbelievably, Gianna insisted she was in the right. That's exactly the problem. I only heard about it from my colleague, so I thought it might be a bit exaggerated, but it seems it's all true. Frederick's expression turned irritated. At this rate, the business deal itself might fall through. Gianna! Apologize properly! I forcibly made Gianna lower her head. Gianna seemed to understand the situation had turned bad and apologized. I'm very sorry. I also apologized profusely, and they ultimately forgave us, but Gianna looked like her soul had left her body. In the end, as planned, I took the lead in the discussion. I've seen Nyla's sincere attitude thus far, so we'll go through with the contract. It will be a big plus for both your company and ours, and barring something major, we intended to seal the deal today. Frederick said, and the contract was safely secured. Our original goal was achieved, but Gianna's face was pale the whole way back to our company. And it seems this blunder was reported to Hiram by the client. When we returned to the office, Hiram was waiting for us in our department with a demonic expression, shouting, Gianna! What is the meaning of this? Given that the fate of a $20 million deal was at stake, Hiram's anger was tremendous. Starting with, you have to be mindful of your attitude with clients. He went on and on about everything she did wrong. Once that settled down, he then began reprimanding her about her daily work attitude. You've been stirring up the other highly educated employees and becoming the source of disturbances, haven't you? No, I'm just taking in the employees' grievances. Because Gianna made yet another ridiculous excuse, Hiram became even more furious. What do you mean, taking in grievances? Corporate discipline is falling apart. Seriously. Hiram's lecture part 2 continued with a relentless vigor after that. Thinking it's good for her to be thoroughly scolded for everything up until now, I deliberately left her alone. The other high school graduate employees weren't stopping it either, and were snickering. They're probably harboring similar feelings to me. However, there was no sign of the lecture ending at all, and even an hour after part 2 started, it was still going on. I had business with Hiram, so I wanted it to end soon. So I decided to smoothly step in between Hiram and Gianna. Hiram, let's wrap it up here. I also regret that I shouldn't have had Gianna sit in on the meeting. And as Gianna said, it wasn't good for me to stay silent either. Right. That's right. Following such a snide remark is childish. Gianna pointed straight at me with a grin, as if to say she'd found the culprit. Of course, Hiram immediately scolded her. Hey, you're not the one to talk. Well, I'm reflecting on it. So we're good now, right? Perhaps sensing the crisis of another lecture starting, Gianna tried to quickly slip away. But I had no intention of letting her escape and firmly grasped Gianna's arm. Wait a minute. Gianna, you've been harassing your subordinates in various ways. Take this chance to properly apologize for that too. harassment? I've been appropriately guiding my subordinates, though. Gianna made another excuse, looking off in some irrelevant direction. Fed up, I swiftly pulled out a voice recorder from my pocket. When I hit the play button, Gianna's voice came out. "Why are you so incompetent? I'll have you kicked out of the company. The uneducated have no right to defy me." Such cruel verbal abuse poured out one after another, and Gianna began sweating profusely. "This is, well, don't try to talk your way out of it. In what way is this guidance?" When I took a firm step toward her, Gianna let out a pathetic eek. I'm sorry. I guess that was a bit too cruel. I'll be careful from now on." Gianna is at least uttering words of apology for now, but it's plain as day she's not reflecting. "No, there is no from now on for you. I want to consult with Hiram about whether we can fire you." "Fire me? There's no way that's happening." As Gianna held her head in her hands, the other high school graduate employees suddenly stood up. "I think Nyla's opinion is valid. Gianna has been slacking off at work lately, hasn't she? I don't care if you're highly educated or whatever, stop looking down on people already." Seeing the employees exploding with pent-up frustration, Gianna was flustered. Everyone's aura of anger filled the entire room, making it an atmosphere where she couldn't possibly argue back. "You don't have to get that angry." As Gianna slowly backed away, the door to the room slammed open and a young male employee entered. His name was Jace, and he was a highly educated employee like Gianna. His personality was similar to Gianna's, always complaining about society and the company. Perhaps because of that, he had a good relationship with Gianna and they would have lunched together during breaks. "Jace, it's terrible. They say I'm going to be fired." Gianna clung to Jace, but he gave her a cold look. "Oh, is that so? That's just as well, since you were annoying." "Huh?" Gianna was at a loss for words at his extremely cold response, but Jace ignored her and continued. "I only hung out with you because you said things that were convenient for me, but you reek of nagging, and you're an old lady, so we don't click. You were annoying." "Annoying old lady." Gianna was greatly shocked by Jace's merciless words. "But I doted on you so much." I think Jace is being too blunt, but I guess this is the kind of person that gathers around Gianna. "I think it'll be tough in various ways getting fired at your age, but well, good luck." "Cold, colder than ice." Having lost an ally, Gianna broke down crying on the spot, but no one tried to comfort her. Then Hiram slowly opened his mouth. "I wanted to make the company better, but it seems I had fallen into credentialism before I knew it. I must apologize to the employees too. From now on, I'll look more at people's character when hiring." Hearing that, Gianna wailed that she had lost her place, but I pulled her arm and made her stand up. "This is no time to be crying. First apologize to the employees you've inconvenienced." "Yes." Startled by my thunderous shout, Gianna straightened her back. And she bowed deeply, saying, "I'm very sorry for everything up until now. I will quit the company. You're too trapped by academic background. Because of that, you've lost sight of what's important. Learn to reflect properly and cultivate your heart." "I understand." Her spirit broken, Gianna nodded meekly and burst into tears again. But still, no one tried to take her side, and Gianna continued to shed tears in loneliness. After that, it was officially decided that Gianna would be fired. On her last day at work, she awkwardly packed up her things and left with a back full of sorrow. I think Gianna had mentioned she had no family and nowhere to belong. I predicted that she would surely lead a lonely life from here on. I didn't know what became of Gianna after that, But one day I discovered her working part-time at a nearby beef bowl restaurant. She seemed surprised to see my face but obediently bowed her head, saying, "Welcome to our restaurant." She had aged considerably and looked haggard, so she must have been under a lot of stress. She was being scolded by the younger store manager too, with zero energy. I imagined she would continue to lead a gloomy life like this. The other highly educated employees also lost momentum with Gianna gone. They stopped complaining to Hiram and the other employees. And with the strict gazes from those around them, they seemed to find it hard to stay at the company and quit one after another. Thanks to those people disappearing from the workplace, it became a much easier place to work. As for me, I still work at the same company even now. Because of the Gianna incident, a culture has formed in the workplace of not fighting over academic background. Until recently, there was a confrontational structure of low education versus high education, but in reality, no one wanted that kind of conflict. Also, I'm happy to say that my achievements so far have been recognized, and I was promoted to department manager all at once. From now on, I'll be in a position to watch over my subordinates. I want to do my best to maintain an environment where everyone can work comfortably. The Gianna case made me think a lot about academic background, but I keenly felt that extreme ideas are not good. No matter what your educational background, once you join the company, you're an employee of the same company. I want to work together and help each other without making unnecessary distinctions. With thoughts like that in mind, I'm working again today. I hate being relied on, so let's just cut ties. We're not getting involved with you anymore. When my eldest son Tim and his wife Rosie found out that my monthly pension was only $900, they immediately cut ties with me. It seems they've completely forgotten how much they relied on me and my husband over the years. But I had already made up my mind about something, too. Are you sure about this? What? Rosie hesitated for a moment at my serious question, but the next second, she burst into laughter, dismissing my words. Go ahead and laugh now because you won't be able to when you regret this later. And that day came sooner than I expected. Just 2 months after cutting ties, an unexpected twist awaited us. My name is Caddy. This year, I turned 65 and finally became eligible for my pension. I plan to live a quiet and relaxed life now, but since I've been working until recently, I still catch myself almost going to work out of habit. Old habits really are scary. I try my best to stay sharp mentally and physically, so I don't become a burden to my kids, but I can't help worrying sometimes. My husband Cedric has passed away, but I have 2 sons. My eldest, Tim, is 40, married to Rosie, who's 5 years older than him. My younger son, Dylan, is 35, married to Lenore, his high school sweetheart. They both have their own kids and families now, so I don't want to rely on them for anything. I've always felt that way. But one day, I accidentally fell down the stairs at home, and I ended up needing the help of my daughters-in-law. I broke my right leg and had to be hospitalized. At this hospital, they required a guarantor to complete the admission process. Reluctantly, I sent a message to both of my sons, asking for help. I figured Dylan or Lenore would come through for me. As for Tim and Rosie, they've always been rather cold, so I doubted they'd show up. Whenever they needed something, they'd come to us without hesitation. But during the 2 years Cedric was sick, they didn't even visit him once. During that difficult time, Dylan and Lenore were the ones who constantly checked in on us and took care of everything. However, to my surprise, it was Rosie who walked through the door of my hospital room. I was genuinely shocked. But what came out of her mouth was exactly what I expected. Don't get the wrong idea. I just came to tell you in person that we can't help. There's no way we'll be your guarantors. Please, stop causing us trouble. Rosie didn't offer any kind words, only a blunt refusal. Her flashy clothes and heavy makeup felt out of place in the hospital. Even her strong perfume was overwhelming. And as always, she wasn't interested in hearing what I had to say. Being a guarantor is just a formality, really. I've already paid a deposit, and I'll only be here for about a week, so I don't think I'll be much of a bother. Excuse me, but Caddy, you're retired and living off your pension, right? How much are you getting each month? $900 a month. No way! That's less than my monthly allowance. I almost wanted to scream, "No way," right back at her. Rosie had been a housewife ever since she got married, so I wondered if Tim was really giving her that much allowance. Just then, Lenore rushed in, slightly out of breath. Sorry I'm late. I've just finished the guarantor paperwork downstairs. The moment Rosie heard Lenore's words, her frown turned into a smile. Oh, I see. I was worried for no reason, then. I'll just leave everything to you, Lenore. With that, she quickly left the room. She hasn't changed, has she? Lenore chuckled wryly at Rosie's behavior. After thanking Lenore, I couldn't help but ask something that had been on my mind. Sorry for being nosy, but how much is your monthly allowance, Lenore? $100 a month. That seems a little low, especially since you're working too. Right now, saving for a house is our top priority. Besides, the allowance you've been giving me really helps. When Cedric fell ill, Lenore would visit him at the hospital almost every day with the kids. And she would also help take care of him so I could rest. Ever since Cedric passed away, she's brought meals over to me, saying she made too much. It's only natural that I'd want to give her a little extra spending money. Of course, I've never given Rosie a cent. I'm fine with my allowance, but Rosie's probably struggling. She's part of a group of wealthy mom friends. Lenore's eldest son is in elementary school, attending the same school as Rosie's daughter. Rosie's circle of mom friends is filled with women from wealthy families. And they apparently host luxurious lunch gatherings quite often. Tim is completely under Rosie's thumb, even though she's 5 years older than him. I wondered how their finances were holding up, considering Tim doesn't have a particularly high-paying job. But honestly, I have no intention of worrying about or helping them. Not long after they got married, Tim and Rosie moved into a high-rise apartment. Cedric signed as their guarantor, but he regretted it almost immediately. Within a few months, Tim and Rosie came to us, saying they couldn't afford the rent. Dad, please help us, Tim pleaded, bowing his head to Cedric. It wasn't a cheap place, especially being so close to the train station. Both Cedric and I were against the idea, but Rosie, wanting to keep up appearances, insisted on signing the lease. As expected, the rent started eating into their finances, and they had already fallen behind on payments by several months. I'll never forget what Rosie said at that time. We can't pay the rent, but Cedric, you're our guarantor, aren't you? Even Cedric scowled at that remark. But Tim begged him so desperately that Cedric reluctantly paid off the rent on the condition that they sign a promissory note. We urged them to move to a place within their means, but they stayed in that apartment until the lease renewal came up, with Cedric covering the rent for nearly 2 years. When the lease was up, they had the nerve to come back and ask him to remain their guarantor without batting an eye. Even Tim was hesitant at that point, but Rosie brazenly said, "Moving will cost money too, so it's better for us to stay here. We need your cooperation." Then why don't you ask your own parents to be your guarantors? When I said this, Rosie glared at me, clearly irritated. My parents don't believe in guarantors or debt. Well, neither do we, I responded firmly. Rosie tried to cling to Cedric, but he wouldn't even look at her. After that, they moved to a different apartment. It was another high-rise, but this time it was a notorious accident site with an incredibly cheap rent. No long-term tenants, and no need for a guarantor. I couldn't understand how they could bear to live in such a place just to keep up appearances. Even though their rent was now lower, not a single cent of the rent Cedric covered has been repaid. So, when Rosie said earlier, "A guarantor is out of the question. Don't be a burden," I couldn't believe the audacity of her words. But then again, this is a woman who can't even keep up with rent, refuses to work, yet constantly wears new clothes and designer items. I had a reason for notifying both of my sons this time. I had been thinking about it for a while, but now my decision was final. A week later, on the day of my discharge from the hospital, I was waiting for Dylan and his family, when Tim and Rosie unexpectedly showed up. They said they had something important to discuss with me and promised it wouldn't take long. Just then, Dylan and his family arrived, with their boys energetically bursting through the hospital room door. "Hurry up! Let's go get some steak!" Today, we plan to celebrate my discharge with Dylan's family by having steak. The grandchildren were so excited, clearly hungry and eager for the meal. "What? Steak? Well, we'll join you then." How shameless. Weren't they just going to deliver their message and leave? But I knew that if I refused, they would insist. I didn't want to show any ill will in front of the grandkids. Reluctantly, I agreed. As expected, Tim and Rosie ordered only the most expensive items from the menu, further irritating me. It was obvious they hadn't come to share any good news. Sensing this, Lenore took the kids to a nearby park once they'd finished eating. With their bellies full and content, Tim and Rosie finally got to the point. "Caddy, do you really plan on living off just $900 a month?" I already knew what Rosie was going to say next. If they were truly concerned about my financial situation, they wouldn't have eaten so indulgently today. So, with a bit of sarcasm, I replied, "Yes. I've always lived frugally, and although today was a rare splurge, I can manage perfectly well with $900. But of course, sarcasm was lost on them. Rosie declared, "We've discussed it and made a decision. We don't want to be relied on, so we're cutting ties. We won't be in contact with you anymore." The two of them laughed as they spoke, having decided this after learning about my $900 monthly pension. They also mentioned that I would need rehabilitation, and they didn't want to be inconvenienced by anything that would take up their time beyond just financial matters. "But please don't misunderstand us. We're not saying that we don't want to help you or take care of you. It's just that, with our own kids, it's physically impossible." Their grand excuses were just as I had expected. I looked at Rosie with a serious expression and asked, "Are you sure about this?" "Huh?" Rosie was momentarily taken aback by my serious tone, but then quickly burst into laughter and responded, "Are you sure about this? That's what we should be asking. I can't believe we're hearing it from the one being cut off, Caddy. Tim, are you okay with this too?" "If Rosie says so, then it's fine." Tim had always been easily influenced, though he used to have a caring side toward his parents. Now, he was completely under Rosie's control. "Got it. Dylan, be our witness." As soon as Dylan nodded, Rosie's laughter grew even louder. "Dylan, I'm asking you too. Since your lifestyle is as low as Caddy's, I'm sure you'll get along well." At that, Dylan looked straight at the two of them and said, "I'm cutting ties with Tim and Rosie as well." Rosie showed a brief moment of surprise, but quickly shot back at him. Well then, Dylan, make sure you never come to us for help. I'll leave all the support and care for Caddy to you. You'll regret it. Dylan glared at them, but Rosie sneered. Not a chance. Absolutely not. Poor Dylan, pulling the short straw as the second son. Oh, but I guess you've always been poor, haven't you? Even at the end, Rosie couldn't resist throwing out one last insult. Tim, it seemed, was unaffected by cutting ties with me and Dylan, as long as he had Rosie. And so, Dylan and I severed ties with Tim and Rosie. 2 months after the estrangement, on an early Sunday morning, I received an unexpected visit from unwelcome guests. Tim and Rosie. Without even acknowledging my use of a cane as I answered the door, Rosie immediately raised her voice. Buy us a new car too. What are you talking about? We know. You bought Dylan a luxury car. She pointed to the newly delivered car parked outside. Tim said nothing, clearly unconcerned about the car. His priority was keeping Rosie happy. Yes, that's true. I bought that car for Dylan. But how does that mean I need to buy one for you too as well? Don't play dumb. You've been hiding Cedric's inheritance from us. I had no idea what she was talking about. When Cedric passed away, there was only $500 left in his account. Cedric, who had always been concerned with appearances, had kept giving financial support to these two, wanting them to think of him as a generous father. In the end, Rosie had forcefully taken even that last $500. So, you're saying that because I bought a car with Cedric's hidden inheritance, you think you're entitled to it as well? Exactly. Well, I hate to break it to you, but the only thing left of Cedric's estate was the money you took. I've been working all this time, so I have my own savings. I told Rosie this, but she wasn't satisfied. That car costs $50,000, you know? There's no way you could afford it unless it came from an inheritance. Haha. I couldn't help but laugh, which only made Rosie more aggressive. Are you laughing because you got caught and now you're trying to cover it up? You're the worst. I was the top salesperson for years. Of course, I got promoted too. I have enough savings to buy a car like that. Huh? I just bought the car so Dylan and his family can help me with errands and take me to rehab. You two, who cut ties to avoid being relied on, have no right to complain about it. Rosie clenched her fists in frustration, unable to respond. Then buy Rosie a new car too. It's not fair for her. Tim, apparently forgetting they had cut ties, was now begging me for a car for Rosie. Just then, Dylan and Lenore returned from their shopping trip. We're home. As they entered the house, Rosie followed suit, as if she lived here. We're home? Do Dylan and Lenore live here now? I'm still relying on my cane, so they've moved in to help me out. Is that enough of an explanation? I wanted them to leave. Dylan and Lenore had brought fresh bread, and now it would get cold. But Rosie had something ridiculous to say next. This is our house, the one we'll inherit someday. Don't go making decisions on your own. She cut ties with us and left everything to Dylan, yet here she was claiming the house? We were all left speechless. Who told you that you'd inherit this house? Well, Tim is the eldest son, so when Caddy passes away, it's only natural the house would go to us. And even if we're estranged, that's how it works legally, right? It's incredibly unpleasant to hear you talking about this while I'm still alive. When I said that, Rosie fell silent, clearly uncomfortable. So you plan to do nothing to help, waiting for me to die so you can claim the house? That's awfully convenient for you, isn't it? That's not what I meant. Rosie's voice grew quieter and quieter. Well, that's what it sounds like to me. And just so you know, this house is already out of your reach. I've given it to Dylan as a living inheritance. I promised Cedric. He said we would inherit this house someday. Right, Tim? Desperate for support, Rosie looked to Tim, who quickly nodded in agreement. That's a lie. I bought this house with my own money. It's under my name. Cedric wouldn't make up such a story to make himself look good. Huh? Rosie had completely angered me. I've been thinking a lot since my accident, realizing you never know what life might throw at you. And in that moment, I decided I don't want to leave you a single cent. In other words, I want to leave every cent I can to Dylan and his family, who have been good to me. I laid out my honest feelings. At this, Rosie began to change her tone. Caddy, you're being manipulated. You have to wake up. These people are just trying to score points with you for the inheritance. Can't you see that all their kindness is just a facade? Fake kindness? Fine by me. It's still better than doing nothing. Even if, by some wild chance, Dylan and Lenore were faking it, they've helped me countless times. I want to repay that. What have you ever done for me? At that, Rosie fell silent. Of course, she couldn't say anything. She had never done anything for me, except cause trouble. Naturally, I knew very well that Dylan and Lenore's actions weren't out of pretense. They had even refused when I offered to gift them the house early. They'd told me they didn't need an expensive car either, but I insisted on choosing it. The house and the car were bought with the savings I'd worked so hard for, and I didn't intend to leave any of it to Tim and Rosie. Dylan and his family had agreed to take care of me, and that was enough. You never should have said something as stupid as cutting ties. I told you you'd regret it, Dylan said, glaring at Rosie. Rosie turned her gaze to me and said, Then at least give us the money equivalent to the house. Tim is Caddy's son too, so he has a legal right to it. Of course, I had anticipated this. I pulled out a pile of documents from the living room drawer and threw them in front of Rosie. They were the stack of IOUs Cedric had Tim write up, including all the financial help we'd provided after covering his rent. It was a sizable pile. You can start talking about rights after you settle this. It's worth far more than what you think you're entitled to. Rosie's face instantly turned pale, clearly not expecting this. Even Tim, who had been quiet until now, stared at the IOUs in disbelief. Listen, I inherited Cedric's estate, which means I have every right to collect this debt from you. But I've just been so busy. I don't want to hear excuses. Did you really think you could just forget about it because Cedric passed away? Oh, but that's just like you, isn't it? You took every last bit of financial support Cedric gave, and when he collapsed and ended up in the hospital, you disappeared without a word. Mom, it's not like that. Rosie is just really dedicated to the kids and their education, so she's always busy. Tim tried to defend Rosie, but I wasn't backing down. Oh, she's busy, all right. Busy going to luxury lunches with her mom friends every day? The focus isn't on the kids, but on exchanging information about the latest brands and bragging about each other's purchases. No time for visiting the sick or helping with care. That's not worth a penny, after all. Tim, who had been defending Rosie this whole time, suddenly looked furious. Luxury lunches? That's not true. This is all a misunderstanding. We were just having affordable lunch meetups. I told you before. Remember? Rosie was panicking, her words getting jumbled, but Lenore joined in to back me up. Didn't you once mock me for having lunch at a regular restaurant? You said, I'm always at $100 a head lunches. Stop saying unnecessary things. I've been eating cheap lunches every day, and you're spending $100 on lunch? That's not what I meant. It's all a misunderstanding. Rosie and Tim's position was quickly becoming more precarious. Then Rosie turned to me, offering a new excuse. Cedric told us after he was hospitalized. He said we didn't have to repay the money, that he was giving it all to us. Hearing this, a long-buried anger within me resurfaced. I wasn't going to hold back anymore. That's another lie. You never even visited him in the hospital. When exactly did Cedric tell you that? You've been using Cedric all this time, and now even after his death, you continue to exploit him? But that was between Tim and Cedric. I had nothing to do with it. But Tim, who had been silent all this time, remained quiet still. It was likely that the lunch incident had hit him hard. As his mother, I knew Tim well. There was one thing he could never tolerate, and that was being lied to. Tim often asked Cedric for financial help by saying, "Raising kids is expensive. Keeping up with the mom friends is important for exchanging information, and I want to do whatever I can for them." He probably believed that because Rosie had told him so. The truth is, Rosie had been married before, and her children were from her previous marriage. Tim was drawn to her determination as a single mother and wanted to make the family happy, so he supported them. I knew all this, as well as Tim's personality, when I intentionally brought up the topic of the lunch gatherings. That's how much I couldn't forgive Rosie. Rosie, do you remember you sent me a message by mistake on the day Cedric was hospitalized? Is this what they call a careless mistake? Huh? Tim leaned in, and I showed him the message I had saved. With trembling hands, Tim threw his phone onto the floor. Rosie picked it up and looked at the screen, her face turning even paler as she began to shake even more than Tim. The mistaken message Rosie had sent me read, "Ugh. The ATM's in the hospital now. So useless." At that moment, I debated whether or not to tell Tim right away, but decided to consult Dylan and Lenore first. Right now, we should focus on Dad's health. But later, we'll settle this properly. Dylan, who had listened to the whole story, had said this, and I agreed. Just like Dylan, Lenore had supported me through it all, looking after me with great care. That's why I held such a special gratitude for her. Cedric had always liked to show off, but he had many good qualities, making it hard to hate him. I remember that, back when we were dating, he won me over with lavish gifts. Only for me to find out after we married that he had no savings at all. He didn't cheat, drink excessively, or gamble, and he was always just a low-level manager, but he took his work seriously. Looking back now, I realize he was probably just a clumsy man in his own way. After Cedric passed away, I was going through his belongings when I found a bundle of IOUs with a letter addressed to me. The letter began with an apology, saying, "I'm sorry for all the trouble I've caused." Cedric admitted that he had spoiled Tim, who turned out to be as irresponsible as he was. He wrote that if anything happened to him, Tim must repay the debt, and with that money, he wanted me to live a comfortable life in my old age. The letter was dated just a few days before Cedric collapsed, so he must have known his health was failing. I haven't shown this letter to anyone, and I have no intention of ever showing it. Dylan and Lenore feel the same way I do. They could never forgive Rosie. Tim, who received more love and support from Cedric than anyone, would likely feel the same. That's why the anger toward Rosie is immeasurable. It's not true. I didn't do this. I don't know anything about it, and someone must be setting me up. Rosie clung to Tim's leg, but he kicked her away. It was hard to believe this was the same man who had once been so kind to her. Please, just believe me. If you want me to believe you, then pay back the debt right now. I begged Dad for money because you said we needed it for the kids. I borrowed it, but you spent it all. The tables had completely turned. Up until now, Rosie had always been the one in control, and Tim just went along with it. But not anymore. I don't have any money. Then sell your clothes and bags. Please, no. Those things mean more to me than my life. Oh, really? So, your kids aren't more important than those things? I guess I've been fooled this whole time. Rosie could only shake her head vigorously, unable to find the words to speak. It was as if Tim no longer saw her at all. Tim grabbed the bundle of IOUs without a second thought and headed for the door. Wait, Tim, please wait. Rosie hurried after him, but Tim drove away by himself. The next day, we took the grandkids and went on a day trip to visit Cedric's grave and report everything to him. After spending a nice day together, we returned home to find Rosie standing outside. Where have you been? I've been waiting here for hours. She was yelling so loudly that we had no choice but to let her in. It was clear why she was here. Where's Tim? He hasn't come home since yesterday. Rosie was clearly upset. And understandably so. He left divorce papers behind, and all my designer things are gone. I figured. Tim's never coming back. That's just who Tim is. You know something, don't you? Since then, Tim hasn't come here, nor has he contacted me. But I know Tim very well. He's always liked strong-willed, selfish women. He believes they have no hidden sides, so no matter how much they mess with him, he doesn't seem to mind. But once someone lies to him, even once, it's over. You lied to Tim, didn't you? He kept begging Dad, believing you when you said it was for the kids. Lavish lunches and designer goods for the kids? Were those really necessary? That's... Rosie's voice suddenly lost its strength. When a friend or girlfriend lies to him, Tim cuts them off completely. No matter how devoted he was to them before, he becomes cold as ice, like a different person. Didn't you know that? No matter how much you apologize, it won't touch Tim's heart. His past girlfriends were all difficult, too. One even waved a knife at him, but Tim didn't flinch. He just said, "Go ahead." Crying or screaming doesn't work on Tim. If only you had understood Tim a little better. Hearing Dylan's words, Rosie lunged at me. You knew that, and still you brought up the lunch. You knew Tim would get mad, and you said it on purpose, didn't you? Yes. Yes. Are you trying to act righteous now? What's so fun about tearing apart my family? It's not about Tim. He chose you, and that's his responsibility. Sure, he's paying a steep price, but it can't be helped. But you're the one I can never forgive. Rosie stepped back, seemingly shaken by my intensity. I haven't forgiven you since the day I saw that message. You always act like you're in control, but on the day of my discharge, I had already decided on cutting ties with you before you even brought it up. What? I wanted you to find out after I was gone that everything was passed down to Dylan and the others before I died. You won't get a share because of the IOUs. But you made me angry. If you had just complained about the car, I would have let it slide. But taking advantage of Cedric's death to weave lies and try to exploit the situation? That's nothing short of desecration. I continued. Tim probably feels the same way, which is why he left. He might come here, but he's never going back to you. Please. I can't bear to lose Tim. I'll apologize as much as it takes. Can't you talk to him and make him help me? Please. So, it's come to this. Lenore was right. The day the issue with the guarantor for my hospital stay came up, Dylan came over, and the three of us, Lenore, Dylan, and I, had a talk. "Mom, isn't it about time to end this? I plan to cut ties once I'm discharged. That's enough for me." That's when I told them about the inheritance and the existence of the IOUs. "I'll probably get to see Rosie's frustration from heaven, and that'll be enough for me." Cedric would agree. "But if she angers me before then, I'll make sure she's completely cornered." "I can't forgive her for that message. Dad didn't deserve that." "Me neither." "Cedric adored the kids, too. There's no way I can forgive her." Cedric never spent money on himself but always supported Tim, and he also took care of Dylan and Lenore. He often helped look after the grandchildren since both of them were so busy with work. So, how could we exact revenge on Rosie? When I thought about what would hurt her the most, I realized it wasn't her kids, but rather her designer items and her relationships with her posh mom friends. But Lenore said, "I think the thing Rosie values most is probably Tim." Dylan and I were surprised. For over a decade, Tim had worn the same clothes, and it wasn't unusual to see him in socks with holes in them. It was clear that very little money had ever been spent on him. It was hard to believe that Tim, who was treated so poorly, was the most important thing to her. "Tim's tall, and he's actually quite good-looking, isn't he? Even among her mom friends, he's got a good reputation. Plus, he works at a big company, and he's 5 years younger than her. Rosie's always bragging about him. She remarried even with a stepchild in tow, and he does whatever she says." To that status-obsessed woman, he might indeed be her most prized possession. She can always buy more designer goods, but Rosie will never find another great catch like Tim. In that case, the solution was simple. All I had to do was expose Rosie's true nature. I hadn't originally planned to say anything, but when my anger boiled over, I brought up the lunch event, and it went exactly as I thought it would. And now, Rosie was crying, saying she couldn't bear to lose Tim. If that's how you feel, you should have taken better care of Tim and never lied to him. And you should have been more grateful to Cedric. This is your own doing. It's your fault. If you hadn't told Tim, this wouldn't have happened. I'm glad I'm finally woke up. Sooner or later, it would have come to this. You're a liar, after all. Rosie began to cry at my words. None of us will ever forgive you. So don't show your face here again. Now get out. Dylan's angry shout finally made Rosie leave. Afterward, we visited Cedric's grave. Since then, Rosie hasn't come to our house. That's because it's physically impossible for her to do so now. The night before that day, Rosie's parents came to our house to apologize. Tim had gone home that day, taken all of Rosie's designer goods, sold them, but the amount still wasn't enough to cover the debt. So, he went to his in-laws and told them everything that had happened. Rosie's parents brought the exact amount from the IOU, combining it with what Tim had raised, and bowed deeply in apology to us. Rosie had previously said her parents despised being guarantors or dealing with debt. And it became clear that this was because she had caused them so much trouble during her first marriage. They were very strict people, and it was a mystery how such a daughter could have been raised by them. With nowhere to go and no money, Rosie returned to her parents' home and is now working under their supervision, helping with the family business. It seems she won't be free until she repays the money they covered for her. Rosie's parents initially wanted to cut ties with her daughter completely, but for the sake of their grandchild, they made the difficult decision to take her back. Rosie, still unwilling to divorce Tim, didn't submit the divorce papers even after 6 months. Tim called her once. "Submit the divorce papers, I'm getting remarried," he said. when she asked what kind of woman he was marrying.
Someone who doesn't lie,
Tim simply replied. Rosie's parents, half forcing her, finally made her submit the divorce papers, and the divorce was finalized. This much I heard from her parents-in-law. After that, Rosie's lunch gatherings and her social life with the mom friends disappeared completely. Having bragged so much about Tim before, Lenore told me that at school events, she's now the subject of gossip and ridicule. We received a single call from Tim as well. He laughed and said,
"The remarriage thing was a lie, my first ever lie."
He added,
"I know it's inevitable that I'll be cut off, and I don't need any inheritance. I won't show my face at home anymore, but if anything happens to Mom, please let me know."
He also mentioned that after realizing how terrible he was at choosing women, he's now living happily with a cat because cats don't lie. I think that's a wise choice. However, I still worry, since Tim is quite popular with women. I finished rehab sooner than expected, which surprised the doctors. They called it a miraculous recovery. The reason is simple. I felt bad continuing to ask Lenore to drive me around. Lenore would say, "You bought me a car, so feel free to use me as your chauffeur." But I just can't do that. We're currently considering renovating the house. Dylan and his family have generously offered to cover all the renovation costs, insisting that they don't want to rely too much on me. I've made sure that I have enough saved so that if necessary, I can afford to move into a care home without burdening my children. Dylan and Lenore are both against the idea of me going into a home, and I appreciate their feelings. Cedric's letter had wished for me to live luxuriously with the money returned from the loans, but I've never been interested in luxury. Having a kind son, a wonderful daughter-in-law, and my grandchildren, this life is more luxurious than anything else. I think I'll be just fine living on $900 a month going forward. Get out of here.
Leave? I warned you over the phone. If you dare to reprimand my daughter again, you'll have to leave. You ignored my warning so kindly. Get out. That's absurd.
I'm shocked by Emily, my sister-in-law's, unreasonable demand, at a loss for words. Seeing me silent, Emily continues her tirade.
You're just my brother's wife, an outsider. Stop pretending to be part of our family.
Hearing these words from Emily shatters something inside me. I had endured Emily's verbal abuse and her daughter Olivia's selfishness, thinking they were family. But now, all the things I did with their interests at heart have been entirely negated. I have no reason to respect Emily and Olivia anymore.
All right. I'll leave.
I reply calmly and start packing. Emily and her daughter Olivia laugh heartily at my situation. But they won't be laughing for long. I think this as I gather my belongings. My name is Chloe. I live with my husband Ethan and his parents. Ethan had requested, from the time he proposed, that we live with his parents once we're married. At first, I hesitated, but when I met Ethan's parents, I realized they were decent folks who respected boundaries. Convinced that life with them would be manageable, I accepted Ethan's proposal. Once we moved in together, my mother-in-law took over all the housework while I worked outside. In turn, I took over the chores when I was at home. We divided the work in the house, and everything went smoothly. However, the visits from Ethan's sister Emily were always distressing. Emily has a daughter, Olivia. They frequently visited us, and each time, Emily would take jabs at me relentlessly.
Chloe, can I get a cup of tea? I'm so tired from my part-time job and raising my child. You must be relaxed on your off days at home. I'm so jealous.
Well, I also work when I'm at home. Oh, the work you do at home is insignificant. I go out to work every day and have a leadership position. Don't compare yourself with me. When it was time for Olivia to find a job, Emily often came over to complain about why Olivia couldn't find one.
Olivia is excellent, just like me. The recruiters who reject her must be blind.
Maybe she could broaden her job search. Whenever I tried to give advice, Emily would lash out furiously.
What? What could you, who barely works, know? Shut up.
It seems Olivia finally landed a job after most of her classmates did. Olivia and Emily came over to report the good news to my mother-in-law.
Granny, I've got a job. Look.
Olivia proudly shows off her job offer letter to my mother-in-law, who smiles contentedly.
Well done, Olivia. Yeah. I didn't expect to get into such a large company in the end. The interviewer was kind from the start.
Next to Olivia, Emily grins broadly. This company is a subsidiary of the company I work part-time for. My name might be known even in the parent company, since I've been around for a while.
So, I got the job thanks to Mom, huh?
It could be. The interviewer saw your name, recognized you as my daughter, and probably had a good impression. Come April, Olivia was to attend a month-long training program for new employees. The training location was only a few minutes away from the home where my in-laws and I lived. Emily, knowing this, called my mother-in-law.
Mom, I want Olivia to commute from your house during her training. The training place is over an hour away from our home.
We have a spare room, and we don't mind at all. Let me just check with Chloe.
Do you need to ask Chloe?
Well, but...
That's your house, right? Chloe's just living there. She won't complain.
Thanks to Emily's insistence, I only found out that Olivia would be living with us for a month after everything had been decided. I was a bit puzzled, but there was no reason to oppose Olivia living here. I warmly welcomed Olivia, and our shared life began. Once the training began, Olivia was late 1 out of every 3 days, despite the training location being just a stone's throw away. It seemed that her habit of waking up at a fixed time every morning had completely disappeared due to her relaxed student life.
Grandma, why didn't you wake me up?
I called you many times.
If I don't make it in time, calling me doesn't mean anything. Forget it. I'm taking the morning off today. Please call the company and tell them I'm taking a half day off due to poor health.
Olivia, you're an adult now. You should be doing such things yourself.
If I say I'm too sick to even make a phone call, it'll be more believable. Just do as I say.
Taking advantage of my mother-in-law's soft spot for her granddaughter, Olivia had become completely spoiled. Even when she came home from training, Olivia wouldn't do anything for herself. Grandma, I'm tired. Is dinner ready?
Welcome back, Olivia. I'm about to make it. What? You're just starting now? Why didn't you have it ready by the time I got home? I'm tired and want to eat right away. You're so thoughtless.
I'm sorry. I'll have it ready soon. Seeing my mother-in-law being pushed around by Olivia, who was probably tired from her first job, I couldn't stand it and spoke up.
Listen, Olivia, having a warm meal waiting for you when you come home isn't something to be taken for granted. Why don't you show some appreciation to Grandma? Why do I have to listen to you, Chloe? You're not even family. Stay out of it. Not family? I married Ethan, so I am part of your family, Olivia.
Family? LOL. Mom said, Chloe is my brother's wife, so she's an outsider, LOL.
Then let me tell you as a senior member of the workforce. Olivia, you should take more responsibility for yourself.
Waking up on time to avoid being late is a basic rule of being an adult. A senior in the workforce, LOL. Chloe, you're not even going to work every day, LOL. Wait till you're actually working hard like me or mom before you start acting all high and mighty. Olivia seemed to completely ignore what I was saying. Then one day, when I returned home from work, I could hear Olivia's loud voice coming from the living room.
What do you mean you're going out? It's unacceptable that there's no dinner when I come home exhausted.
I'm sorry, but we were looking forward to our theater outing that day.
Your theater outings are just fun and games. I have work. You need to cancel it.
Apparently, my in-laws had informed Olivia that they were going to the theater next week and wouldn't be able to cook dinner, and this had infuriated her. I was well aware that my mother-in-law had been looking forward to this day at the theater for quite some time. However, I was worried that if things kept going this way, they might feel compelled to cancel their plans to avoid upsetting Olivia. So, I hurriedly proposed a solution.
Since you've been looking forward to this, you should go. I'll take care of Olivia's dinner that day.
My in-laws seemed thrilled by my suggestion, but they quickly began to worry. But isn't that a work day for you, Chloe? Are you sure it'll be all right?
Yes, if I arrange things now, I think I can get home early. So, don't worry and have a good time.
On the day of the theater outing, I left work early to come home. My in-laws happily left for their event. After seeing them off, I did some shopping for dinner and waited for Olivia's return. As always, as soon as Olivia came home, she lay down on the couch and waited for dinner. Oh, I'm hungry. Chloe, hurry up and get cooking.
Olivia, let's cook together today.
At my words, Olivia jumped up from the couch.
What? What do I have to do? Isn't it natural to cook your own food? No way! I've been at work. I'm not doing housework when I'm tired. I've been working too. I've got the ingredients, can't you just help me out? The same. You, Chloe, who can come home whenever you want from your easy job, and me, who has to go at a set time every day, are not the same. Just hurry up and make it by yourself.
The fact that I was able to come home early today was a result of painstakingly adjusting my work schedule. But I doubted that Olivia would understand that. Swallowing my anger, I calmly tried to reason with her.
Listen, Olivia, I'm not asking you to help me because I find it bothersome to cook alone. I want you to understand what it means to be a responsible adult. What? I don't need your interference. After letting the grandparents go out without asking me, you're giving me a lecture, which is super annoying.
Olivia then stood up, visibly irritated, and started dialing on her phone.
Mom? Listen to this. Chloe keeps nagging me, and she won't even cook dinner.
She unloaded her complaints about me to her mother, Emily. Once she had said her piece, she handed me the phone with a triumphant smile. Mom wants to talk to you, Chloe. As I took the phone, Emily shouted at me angrily.
Listen here. Who do you think you are, talking to my daughter like that as my son's wife? If you continue to cause problems for my daughter, I'm going to ask you to leave that house. It's not about causing problems. All I wanted to do was impart some sense of responsibility to Olivia as a working adult. So, you're trying to lecture on being a responsible adult, Chloe? You're not even a full-time employee. How can someone who is hardly needed by the company afford to be so cocky? How can you say I am not needed, Emily?
When you've been around as long as I have, you can tell at a glance who's capable and who's not. Well, I've made sure to see off many a dead weight. Then, without a second thought, Emily added, "Just go and prepare dinner for my daughter," and hung up the phone. Olivia, sitting next to me, smirked as she looked my way.
You better not oppose my mom, Chloe. There's no one at work who can even admonish her. So get to making dinner already, okay?
With that, she sprawled lazily on the couch again. This mother and daughter pair, there's no reasoning with them. Left with no choice, I began to prepare the meal.
I'm so hungry because of your pointless chit-chat, Chloe.
As she nibbled on the meal I prepared, Olivia mumbled complaints under her breath. Once she was done eating, she abandoned her dishes and headed back to the couch to watch TV, without so much as a thank you.
Hey, Olivia. At least clean up after yourself.
I tried repeating myself, but all I got was a bored look from Olivia. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. It was Emily.
Why are you here?
To my surprise, Emily casually replied.
It seemed like you didn't quite get the message over the phone, Chloe, so I thought I'd come over and tell you directly.
Hearing her mother's voice, Olivia excitedly reported.
Mom, listen. Just after you warned her over the phone, Chloe started lecturing me again.
Hearing Olivia's words, Emily glared at me.
Looks like it was the right decision to come here after all. You're still complaining to my daughter even after everything I said.
I had backed off on the phone, but I couldn't let this go. For Olivia's sake, I had to say something.
It's not a complaint. I'm merely teaching her the basic manners of cleaning up after herself, something even a grade schooler should understand.
Hearing this, Emily snapped at me.
There's no need for someone like you to tell us about manners. Have you considered your own situation before lecturing about manners?
What about my situation?
You and Ethan can barely afford a house even with both of your salaries combined. You're just leeching off this household. Why don't you change your own attitude before teaching my daughter about being a responsible adult? I'm not here to leech off you. As proof, I make sure to pay my share of the rent and living expenses every month.
I wonder. Well, it doesn't matter. Either way, you're going to leave this place.
Leave?
I told you on the phone. If you continue to berate my daughter, you'll need to move out. You ignored my warning, so now it's time for you to go.
That's absurd.
I was at a loss for words at the sheer injustice of it all. Seeing me unable to retaliate, Emily went on.
You're still an outsider, even if you are my brother's wife. Stop acting like you're part of the family.
Emily's words hit me hard, and something inside me crumbled. I had put up with Emily's insults and Olivia's selfishness because I thought of them as family. I had been rejected by them despite doing everything with their best interests at heart. There was no reason left for me to restrain myself with Emily and Olivia anymore.
All right, I'll leave.
I say quietly, beginning to pack my things. At the sight of me, Emily and Olivia start to crack up. Ignoring their laughter, I continue to pack when my in-laws return home.
Oh, is that you, Emily? Chloe, what's with the luggage?
My mother-in-law's face shifts as she takes in the scene. Before I can answer, Emily chimes in. Chloe's been lecturing Olivia while she can't even do her own job. She's become such a nuisance. We decided to send her packing, haha.
What?
My mother-in-law's face drains of color.
Apologize at once. And you too, Olivia.
Why should I apologize to Chloe? If she wants to be part of our family, she should ask us. Maybe then we'll consider it, haha. Emily's statement is backed up by a firm nod from Olivia. My mother-in-law sighs deeply. You two, It's over for you.
What? What are you talking about? The one who's done is Chloe, right? She's the one being cut off from our family.
Emily's brazenness leaves my mother-in-law shaking. Do you even realize who made it possible for Olivia to get her job?
That's me, the part-time manager.
Emily tries to puff herself up, but my mother-in-law interrupts her.
No! It's not like that at all. It's because Chloe, who's an executive at the corporate office, recommended her to human resources. Wah, that's a lie. Chloe barely does anything. She's home half the week.
Facing the confrontational Emily, I reveal the truth.
I often attend executive meetings online, so I work from home. Then, did Chloe really get Olivia her job? I really wanted Olivia to find a job on her own, but she begged me for help. Why? Why didn't you say anything? I wanted Olivia to start at the same place as everyone else, to work without any advantages. It was better for her not to know that I was an executive at her company. So, did Mom and Dad know this from the beginning? I had asked your parents and Ethan to keep my position a secret. Emily, since you always assumed I was incompetent, you never showed interest in my work, so there was no need to tell you. So, you're telling me I've been disrespecting an executive at my own company this whole time?
Olivia, now aware of the truth, goes pale.
That's right. Thanks to my concealed identity, I got to learn a lot about how new employees like to fake illness and such. Ha ha ha. Please, please don't tell anyone about this.
I coldly say to the desperate Olivia.
You know, I thought I'd let it slide because it's a family matter, but it seems like I'm not considered family to you too. So, I can't stay quiet if it's something that will harm the company. But I will be assigned after the training. Exactly. Olivia, you're lacking awareness as a working professional. Moreover, you're not willing to accept others' opinions. We can't let you interact with customers with this attitude.
Emily, in her panic, clings to me.
I'll take back what I said. Olivia is Chloe's adorable niece. Don't report anything that would harm her situation. Emily, don't you think you should worry about your own role? What? Your part-time team's high turnover rate has been repeatedly brought up in the parent company's meetings. If it comes to light that you, as the manager, are forcing part-time employees to quit, it's going to be a big problem.
Emily remembered her own words and her face tightened.
Wait, that's a misunderstanding. I was just guiding the unproductive part-timers, and then they quit on their own. I'm not responsible for this. Well, that can be investigated. We have a meeting next week with your company's board members. We'll report this and have it thoroughly examined. No way, my hard-earned managerial position.
Afterwards, I decided not to leave the house after being persuaded by my mother-in-law, but I did report Olivia and Emily to the company. Olivia ended up attending a training center in the mountains for retraining for 6 months, while her peers were assigned positions one after another. It seems she was thoroughly drilled on the basics of being a professional. Emily's workplace underwent an audit at my direction. With complaints from other employees and testimonies from those she had forced to resign, it was found that Emily was using her position of authority to cause a lot of stress to those around her. As a result, Emily was fired. Emily seems to have started a new job to cover her living expenses. However, since she's only ever worked at one place before, she's having a hard time getting the hang of her new job. Despite this, she still acts high and mighty and seems to be on the verge of getting fired from her new job as well. At this rate, her life will likely continue to be difficult. On the other hand, I continue to live peacefully, sharing household chores with my in-laws as usual. This incident seemed to have taken quite a toll on my mother-in-law. Chloe, I'm sorry. Because I've spoiled Olivia and Emily, I made you go through such unpleasant experiences.
No, it's fine. I was happy that you stood up for me.
Having had a good talk with my in-laws, I feel that our bond is even stronger than before. Even though my sister-in-law turned out to be a challenge, I look forward to continuing to live with my mother-in-law, maintaining our good relationship.